Okay, so we are broadcasting and recording, and I just opened up the webinar. So attendees, if anybody has signed on to the Zoom link, should begin populating. And the number is going up. For those of you who are just joining in, we'll just wait a few minutes as people populate the meeting, and then Dr. Balistraci will call the meeting to order.
Terrific. All right, I'm seeing the number of participants slow as they enter. So I'm going to start the meeting tonight. Good evening. This is Monday, February 14th, 2022. This is the Guilford, Connecticut Board of Education. This is our regular meeting for February. Our first order of business is a Pledge of Allegiance. So I invite you to join us for that pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let me just reset up here. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have, as the next order of business, action on minutes. We had a number of meetings in January, so we're going to be acting independently on 5 different sets of minutes. The first are the minutes from the January 6th, 2022 special meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Second. Okay, great. And I'm seeing Dick's hand for a second. Any comments, corrections, questions on these minutes? I do have 2 corrections, and I'm just going to ask Dr. Freeman to confirm that this is an accurate correction. On page 2 of the minutes, in the paragraph that starts about halfway down, in response to a concern expressed by Ms. Rader, the sentence says, Dr. Freeman noted that the student can return to school because of the not showing symptoms with a rapid test. Dr. Freeman noted that the student can return to school. I think that should say 5 days from the date that symptoms were first identified, rather than 5 days from the test date.
So that is correct, right? It would be 24 hours. It must be 5 days from the symptom onset or a positive test, as well as 24 hours of symptom free. That might be the better way to phrase that.
That is the better way, I think, to correct that. And
it's
then
5 days plus 24 days, yes, or 24 hours.
Okay. Actually, that's the only correction I had on these minutes. Any other corrections? All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept these minutes. I'm going to ask for a vote to accept them as amended. All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Terrific, that is unanimous. January 10th, 2022, our regular meeting. Is there a motion to accept these minutes?
So moved.
Great. Kristen Peck, I see a second. Any comments, corrections, or questions?
Katie,
yes, Jennifer, go ahead.
On page 2 under Baldwin Middle School, I think the Cocoa Cafe is actually supposed to be spelled like hot cocoa.
Oh.
It's very minor, but I don't know who Coco is.
But we want to be clear. Excellent. All right. Any other corrections? I had one on page 4. The first full paragraph. Dr. Freeman reviewed driving factors of the budget, including medical benefits, which account for, that should say 2.4% of the increase. Lots
correct.
of numbers got spoken about that night. And then on page 7, under public questions, on the second paragraph, Dr. Balistraci noted that the district has been working hard to provide, I think it's weekly updates on positive cases.
No, Dr. Balistraci,
Was it daily?
we had shifted to daily updates by that time.
Fabulous. Sorry, no corrections. And then the last part of that sentence, to provide a balance between safety and providing for in-school eating as much as possible. The conversation was about feeding people multiple times during the day. Any other corrections, comments? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, on page 4, the second full paragraph where it talks about the elementary assistant principal, thought that was 1.0. It says 2.0.
Yes, that is correct. So under the second full paragraph, Dr. Freeman reviewed investments.
That is correct. It was 1 FTE, not 2.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments or questions? So we have a motion and a second for approving the minutes from Monday, January 10th. May I have a vote on the minutes as corrected? All in favor? Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. Anonymous vote there. Thank you. Now for the minutes of January 13th. This, again, was a special meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Excellent, thank you. And John Delventura, I see a second. Any corrections on these minutes? I am going to note actually one correction, which was the correction Jennifer Baldwin just noted in the last minutes. Under discussion, 1, 2, 3, the third paragraph, Dr. Freeman, again, in the first line, it should be 1.0 elementary assistant principal. Moira, did you have another correction?
Yeah, I mean, it's just language, but on the first page, the last paragraph where we start to talk about the mastery diploma, the third line, it says, Julie Chubb provided background on a new state requirement starting with the class of 2023, which requires the development of a portrait of a vision for each graduate. I think the intent was development of a portrait of the graduate. It just seemed a little.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Yep.
Yep.
And then
Thank
a little further down, it just says the project should demonstrate competencies in areas important moving forward in today's future, including global awareness as a shift from citizenship. So I wasn't really clear what the intent with that sentence was, but I think it would be better served to say in today's future, including global awareness and citizenship.
I agree, yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. Any other comments, corrections, questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the minutes as amended, please raise your hand. I am seeing unanimous. Thank you. All right, next, January 24th. So the next two are the public hearings we held at the end of January. Minutes for January 24th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Great. Second? Moira, thank you. Any corrections? Okay, my only correction is at the very last line of the first page. Dr. Balistraci noted that salaries account for approximately 60% of the budget and negotiated increases account for 1.57% of the budget increase. So just a little number adjustment there. All right. Any other corrections, questions to these minutes? All right. We have a motion to second. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please raise your hand. Excellent. I think that's everybody. Thank you. And last minutes are the minutes for January 25th, 2022, the second night of public hearings on the budget. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? Thank you, Kristen. Second, John. Any comments, corrections, questions? All right. Hearing none, I am going to ask for a vote on these minutes. All in favor, please? Terrific. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We are now at the point of the agenda for public forum on topics on the board agenda. We are going to ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes because we want to make sure that anyone who might have a comment can be heard. I believe we are going to ask people to put their name and address, street address for Guilford in the Q&A box, and then we will invite you in to give your comment to the board.
And I have one person in the Q&A box who is waiting to deliver comment at this time.
Wonderful.
Lisa Kelly. Kevin, if you would bring Lisa into the meeting.
She's coming in now.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi, Lisa, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So Lisa Kelly, 1898 Jennifer's Drive. I have 2 children at A.W. Cox in kindergarten and 3rd grade. And I'm speaking tonight to encourage the board and Dr. Freeman to continuing our mask policies for our schools. I feel that the timing of the state's announcement is based on legislative schedules and not on the real life implications of the policy. I have 2 main concerns. First, there's not a vaccine yet for our youngest children. My younger daughter's kindergarten teacher has 3 children under the age of 5 at home. And I don't think it's fair she should be put at risk of infecting her own children because there's unmasked students in her classroom. My second concern is keeping my kids in school learning and not remotely. At this time last year, my older daughter was in her 2nd of 3 quarantines in her 2nd grade year. She didn't have a full week of in-person school for months. This year, due to the policy to allow masked and vaccinated students to stay in school, despite a contact with a positive case, she has not had to quarantine once, even through the surge we just experienced. In my opinion, bouncing in and out of school between in-person and remote and having no consistency or routine is much worse than having to wear a mask. What would the policy be for contact with positive cases once we remove masks? And how will it be decided when and who to quarantine? If some students continue to wear masks, but a positive case moves unmasked children to remote learning, will our teachers have to divide their attention by teaching both remotely and in person at the same time? This is a lot for our already strained teachers to manage and hardly creates an effective learning environment for either the kids in the classroom or at home. Until parents of our youngest children can at least have the choice to vaccinate their children, and unless we have a clear policy of dealing with positive cases in classrooms where masks aren't being worn, I think the safe and fair policy is for everyone to continue masking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Balistraci, as I watch the queue,
Okay.
I am noticing a number of people who are not entering Guilford addresses or addresses at all. I believe it has been our practice in the past to please invite Guilford residents to comment first, and that we will then provide time for others if they would like to make comment. Would you like me to try to sort through and invite people to comment based on that criteria?
Yes, please. So just to make clear, we want to make sure that Guilford residents get a chance for public comment. So we will prioritize Guilford residents coming into the queue. We do ask that you provide an address. It also helps with minutes. If we still have time, we can accommodate someone else coming in. I am going to, that is not in town, but I am going to recognize that we also have a full agenda tonight, so that, and we do have a budget to vote on. It must be voted on tonight. So if time becomes a problem, I may have to have the meeting, this part of the meeting agenda end so that we can move on.
One other thing, we're being told on chat that the YouTube link is not working. Julie Swanson tells us the YouTube link in the agenda is not working. Whether it's working now or not, I don't know.
Oh, it's there now.
It's there now. Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Dick, though. That's important. We want to make sure that that's working.
All right. I will also apologize if I don't have all of the street names in Guilford memorized after 10 years, but I do believe that we have David Generoso. Mr. Mitchell, if we could invite David to comment to the board, please.
He's coming in. I'm not seeing him anymore.
It looks like he's coming in now. David, if you could turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Well, we'll just have to go with the microphone for now, okay? I don't know how to get the camera on. If someone can tell.
That should be fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, anyway, David Generoso, 2477 Durham Road in Guilford. I want to thank the superintendent and the Board of Education for allowing me to comment. My comments are on the changing of Columbus Day to Columbus Indigenous Peoples Day. As an Italian-American and 28-year resident of Guilford, I am offended by the change, especially in light of the fact that it appears that Columbus Day may have been able to be retained and Indigenous Peoples Day added. I do acknowledge that it also appears that the Board of Ed did attempt to reach a middle ground by combining the 2 days. I wondered to myself as to whether or not there would have been an unstoppable firestorm of criticism if the Board of Ed combined Indigenous Peoples Day with another holiday on the school calendar. I recognize that it is the Board of Ed's responsibility to oversee, manage, and steward the Guilford Public Schools. It would seem also that it is their responsibility to act as a unifier of the Guilford community. Changing Columbus Day to Columbus Indigenous Peoples Day would appear to be divisive to the Guilford community. Thank you for allowing me to address the board, and I apologize for the mishap on the video. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I see Bill Mazzano.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Freeman, Dr. Balistraci. I would also like to weigh in on the change to the school calendar. As an Italian American and Catholic, Columbus Day is very important to me. And I would like to just see it remain as a separate holiday. I do believe that the Indigenous people already have a holiday. I believe it's the Friday after Thanksgiving. So adding it again is I don't really see the point. It would mean a great deal as a Catholic and someone of Italian heritage to be able to maintain that. And so I'm just appealing to you and the board to perhaps consider those of us who might feel a little bit marginalized if that were taken from us. And I do appreciate your time, and I hope you will consider what I've said. It's not really a big ask. I think we can both have our days and be happy with it. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And I see Alicia Valentino.
Mute, start video. Okay, here we are.
Hi.
Dr. Freeman, hello. Thank you for your time. My husband and I are both going to speak. I listed him under my address. We are speaking in support of parents' choice for masking or not masking. And that's what I want to say.
Yeah, I think it should be a choice, and I think there's a lot to be lost with the extended now use of masks, and that should be weighed against the risks of COVID.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And I see Dario Gagliano.
Hello, my name is Dario Gagliano. I'm calling to join some of the others in expressing my disappointment with the merger of Indigenous Peoples Day with Columbus Day. It's neither fair to those who honor Indigenous cultures, nor is it fair to Italian Americans, for which this holiday has been a century-long struggle of acceptance. When Columbus Day was proclaimed by President Harrison in 1892, his purpose was to unify a country that was in deep tensions between the nativist population and the immigrants who came in. Italians in particular were subject to much hatred and persecution, both for their heritage as Italians as well as for their Catholic faith. In 1891, this culminated in the mass lynching of 11 Italian Americans in New Orleans. These people were hunted down, even though they were exonerated in a court case from a crime. It remains the single largest lynching in the history of the United States. So when President Harrison made this holiday, his objective was to ease tensions with Italy, which had protested vigorously the treatment of its citizens, as well as to give a new hero to all Americans, whether Anglo-Saxon Protestant or subsequent immigrants, in order to give them all a person to rally around. In raising Columbus as a founding father, he was including someone who did not fit the traditional Anglo-Saxon mold. He expanded the boundaries of what it meant to be an American, not only for Italian Americans, but for all non-traditional Americans. And this elicited a huge revolt by the KKK and by other nativist groups who saw that the day commemorated a, quote, inferior Catholic Southern European, so much so that they attacked Columbus parades and destroyed Columbus statues. But this was not only limited to the 1892 lynching. Columbus Day during World War II was also very relevant. 600,000 Italian Americans were considered enemy aliens after Pearl Harbor and were officially restricted from their movements. 10,000 were deported internally to internment camps, at least 10,000 in California alone. This injustice was only rectified in 1942 when President Roosevelt made his Columbus Day Proclamation, which abolished this heinous label and announced the acceleration of citizenship for 200,000 Italian Americans. Many of us have contacted you many times in order to find a solution to this issue. And what we propose is to move Columbus Day to the day after Thanksgiving, which is federally recognized as Native American Day and has been recognized by 184 Native American tribes. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk, and I hope that we can talk further about this issue. Thank you for your invitation.
Thank you.
Dr. Freeman, as you're inviting the next person in, I just want to make something clear to all in attendance. We have the calendar on the agenda tonight because we are updating an error that was made in accommodating the New Year's holiday. We are not going to be and don't have on the agenda a discussion of the October 10th holiday. So I do want to be clear that is not a discussion on the agenda this evening.
And so, Dr. Balistraci, does that mean to make clear to participants that if they want to comment on Columbus Day, they're welcome to stay through to the later portion in the agenda where public comment is open on any topic?
I am going to request that because we
Thank you.
are this evening discussing, we have a mask update from Dr. Freeman. And we do have the budget that we are discussing tonight. And I do want to make sure that people who are coming to us with public comment on either of those items, which are items that we will be discussing, or at least for the mask mandate, Dr. Freeman will be updating us on what we know so far. We will not be making any decisions on the masking tonight. But I do want to make sure that people who have public comments on these items get a chance to talk. There is a public question, a comment period at the very end of the meeting. So if people have comments on a Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day concern, I'm going to ask that they wait until the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Next, I will call Joseph Catanzaro.
Hello. Can you hear me?
How are you?
Yes, we
I'm
can.
doing well myself. Actually, I'm here for the same reason as Dario. I'm here in support of not combining Columbus Day.
So then,
so that-
Mr. Catanzaro, I just asked that anyone who's interested in this comment is going to have to wait to the second public comment period for this
Sure.
meeting.
So he just called on me though, so I just assumed that it was my turn.
I have no, I can't tell what people are looking to comment on, but you're welcome to stay with us and comment later in the meeting.
Okay, that works as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can wait.
Thank you so much. So again, please, if you have a public comment on an item that we are discussing on the agenda tonight, so that would be a mask comment or a comment about the budget that we are going to be voting on tonight, you are welcome to address the Board of Ed on either of those two issues.
So I will call on Julie Swanson then and ask people that if you're not commenting on one of those two items to please remove yourself from the queue.
Video. Hi there.
Hello. Hi. Good.
I am going to talk about on the masks tonight. So I first want to start off by asking why we're on Zoom. Our children, staff, and teachers have been in school full-time since the beginning of the year. And to me, this is unacceptable that we're not in person. I think we should all be able to be together in a meeting. But tonight I'm going to speak to implore you to unmask our children. There's absolutely no emergency any longer. We are only one of a few states that still has a mask mandate in school. This has turned into a political issue. Our children are hurting. Depression and suicide rates have skyrocketed. Referrals to speech therapists have skyrocketed. And it's my job as a parent to keep my children safe. It's your job to educate my children. I see what the families are doing on weekends and vacations. They're traveling, playing sports, having parties and more without masks. I just feel the charade is over. The Super Bowl last night had 70,048 unmasked fans, give or take a couple that had a mask on, in California, no less. And there's no Super Bowl in a pandemic. So right there, it tells you where we're at. Madison has already announced that masks will be optional on February 28th at or around the 28th. I expect that Guilford will do the same. If you're still living in fear and wanting to stay masked because you feel safe, then do it. No one's telling you not to. I'd like to know what the end game is, though, for people who still want our children to be masked forever, because it's just not going to happen. The rest of us have moved on. Our children are very low risk and deserve to see their friends and teachers' faces and have a normal education like in the other 38 states. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Kos. I hope I pronounced that properly.
Hello. Hi, I'm
Hello.
Jacqueline.
Hi.
Hi. So thank you, Dr. Friedman and the board. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Koss. I'm a biochemist and alternative practitioner. I'm for giving choice to the parents and to unmask our children. There's not enough time to get into all the science behind all this. However, I feel with the pandemic winding down and the acute cases and children being safe at this time, I feel that it should be a choice of the parents. And so I'm for taking away the mask mandates. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Clarice Yasuhara.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. I am nervous. I am here to ask that we keep the mask mandate. I am in agreement with Lisa Kelly, who spoke earlier. And on top of that, I personally don't believe this is just a Guilford or a Connecticut problem. It's still a worldwide problem. I think this is the perfect example of think locally, think globally, act locally. The Director General of the World Health Organization earlier this month said, quote, "Since Omicron was first identified 10 weeks ago, almost 90 million COVID-19 cases have been reported to the WHO, World Health Organization. We are now starting to see a very worrying increase in deaths in most regions of the world. It's premature for any country either to surrender or to declare victory." Along those lines, this is a continuation of equity work. This is about supporting other communities that don't have the same resources as us to manage going back to virtual. It's not enough to just teach it. We have to actually act on our social justice beliefs. And, you know, this is also about supporting our essential workers. I don't know when the show of gratitude for people that risk their health for the sake of our community disappeared, but, you know, Guilford has heart. Over the past 2 years, I have personally had to go to the hospital for my family for different reasons. And I think if our local medical system is still supporting the use of masks in their buildings, then so should our school system. And finally, this is about the needs of the workers and the many unions that make our kids' school experience the best possible, even under the worst of circumstances. And since we know how hard it is to get substitutes for any positions that work within the public school systems, you have to give more weight to their demands than to those of the parents in this meeting, including mine. Considering the majority of the proposed budget increase is to cover their health insurance, you have to prioritize them. It's just not a question. They deserve the safety of masking and healthcare. So I think that is the gist of what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Brian Wiley next in the queue.
Hi, Brian.
Good evening. I too am a little nervous. And I'm bringing up a new topic that has been addressed by many parents over the past few weeks, at least. Some of you may not know, but any kids who are going or will be going through the Guilford High School system, if the current curriculum that's in place is unchanged, will be required to spend basically a 1 full year class on satisfying a state mandate called the Mastery-Based Diploma Assessment. It's conceptually a wonderful idea, very thinly described by the state as, and I quote, a 1-credit mastery-based diploma assessment. That is, from what our research has shown, the only wording in state law about this particular requirement. That law came out almost 5 years ago, and recently Guilford implemented a program requiring students to spend a semester in the spring of their junior years and the fall of their senior years in a separate class working on this assessment. Most people seem to agree that the general idea of the assessment is good and interesting and worthwhile. It's somewhat similar to a capstone project, a senior thesis, an independent project, that sort of thing, pulling together lots of their different curricula that they've worked on over the years and helping them synthesize and understand it and produce work that they can be proud of, which is a great idea if done right. What seems to be the case now, or is the case from what some of us understand, is that Guilford has done probably a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of design and implementation, as Dr. Freeman mentioned, and come up with a set-aside program that, from what we could find, none of the schools that I think we consider peer schools are doing. They're not doing it that way. And in fact, the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents recently published a report, and on page 6 of that report, they have, I think it's 3 or 4 recommendations for implementation, none of which suggest setting up separate classes. So the question becomes, from a budget standpoint, are the 2.4 additional FTEs for this worthwhile? They may very well be. I think I'm almost out of time. Jason raised something else that I can't see. Is it worth the 2.4 FTEs? It may be. Is it worth taking all kids out of classes for the equivalent of a full year? Most likely not. That's not an independent study. So thanks very much. And there's lots of other information available. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I missed a lot of the key points.
And I see Jen Esposito, who is next in the queue to comment.
Jen, we can see your name on the screen, but you're muted still and we can't see your camera. Oh,
Hi there. This is actually Jen's husband, Chris. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my camera, but I am using my wife's computer. I would like to certainly say that we both together would like to see our children have the opportunity to lose the masks. I think that this population carries the least risk, and yet more than any other population, they've had the most restrictions, especially within the schools. And when you look at the suicide rate, especially among adolescent females, it's up about 50%. When we look at the long-term risk associated with the disruption in their social ability and how they interact with each other, these have all been disrupted, especially with kids with special needs and with educational, the need for extra resources. We are at a point where we have so many different resources, from boosters, vaccinations, appropriate masks, and we have the utilities to make this a safe environment for our kids to thrive. And I ask that we all work together to move forward. I empathize with the fear, but I do think for our children's sake and the long-term risks, we need to start moving forward together. Thank you.
thank you.
And I see Jessica Harrington waiting to comment.
Hello, actually Robert Harrington. I'm using my wife's computer.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for the time. I'm speaking in support of keeping our kids masked, not forever, just hopefully until those children who may not be in the school yet, who are 5 and under, can be vaccinated, so that the risk is mitigated for all. I have a 4-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. My 8-year-old is currently at AW Cox and has no problem wearing his mask every day. He actually seems to be much better at it than I am. The concern I have, though, is my 4-year-old. He cannot be vaccinated yet. It's not available for him. And the risk may or may not be lower for children, but it's still there. And children still go to the hospital with COVID right now because they can't be vaccinated. I know that masks drastically lower the transmission rate, and that 2 masks, 1 on each person, lower it twice as much as it does on just 1 person. And the problem there is that if masking becomes a choice, then we run into a situation where one person's right to swing their fist ends at another person's nose. And someone being unmasked and vaccinated, potentially spreading COVID, increases the risk that my older son will get COVID and bring it home, and we won't know until my younger son gets it. I'm hoping in the next couple of months, the vaccine will be available for my youngest, and he will go and get it as soon as it is available. And I would like to see that the masking stay in place until it is no longer a risk for the younger children that are in direct contact at home with older siblings going to school every day, in contact with all sorts of other people. That's my concern.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
And I see Sarah Salato.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Hi.
we can.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk about this. I'm going to be just addressing my concerns about masks. I am very much for a parent's choice at this point, and I'm really hoping that we can follow suit of our neighbors. I think it's Durham and Madison at the moment that have both decided to make it a choice as of February 28th. Just addressing a couple of things that have some of the previous speakers have said. I do assume that most, if not all, of our teachers and school staff are vaccinated and likely boosted. Therefore, they should be protected against the virus. And if they're not protected against the virus, then I don't understand why we got vaccinated and why there's a booster. So I have to believe that the pharmacies have done their job in making sure that they can protect people who are and have taken the vaccinations. Kids, most kids, except the young ones, are also vaccinated. Again, hoping that it works, then hopefully they will not be passing it on if they do get the virus. I disagree that our priority should be the faculty. I think that we have prioritized the faculty, probably over the past couple of years, as we should have. But at this point, our priority needs to be our kids. They cannot continue having their faces covered. They cannot continue to feel anxious and constant fear of something at this point. I believe we need to move forward. As many people have said, but I don't know if it's been really, I certainly haven't heard it spoken about a lot, is the suicide, depression, eating disorders. All of those have skyrocketed tremendously over the past couple of years. Our psychiatric wards have been filled with children. Residential facilities for mental health issues, as well as other things, have been filled over the past couple of years. We need to look at that as well. My big worry is how we're going to get back from all of that. My big worry is not about COVID at this time. My worry is how we're going to help our students who are, most of them struggling. They're already behind because they lost a year or so. And now with the masks, a lot of kids that are having special needs or issues cannot even see faces. They can't, if they're used to reading lips, they are having been struggles over the past year or two or a couple of years reading lips and therefore understanding. There's kids that have all sorts of different ways and methods of learning. And that's also being changed, obviously, over the past couple of years. As I go out to dinner, I see restaurants are absolutely jam-packed, and it's lovely to see right here in Guilford that's coming back on, and I'm happy for the restaurants. Sports events are jam-packed, concerts, you name it, and life has gone back to normal for them. I truly believe that we must do that for our children. As I said, I worry so much about mental health and getting back to some normalcy. So I just hope that you take all that into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I see Judy Zeidenberg next to comment.
How are you still talking?
Hi, Judy.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay, that's probably better. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I am for parents' choice of masks. I would like to speak on this a little bit. I believe that it should be a choice. As been said, the suicide rates are going up. I don't know if anybody mentions, but the IQ rates have dropped 21%. There's documentation on that. So first we needed to have the vaccine. And so we got a vaccine that is supposed to work for us. So I don't understand why we need a mask if the vaccines are effective. That's a question of mine. I do believe, there's actually no science that say that the masks are effective and work. And I challenge anyone to come up with some documentation that show that. There are health issues. There is something called mask-induced exhaustion syndrome that children are having. There's physiological, psychological, and health consequences with this. I'm happy to send documentation along with this. I believe that we are hurting our children. They are at low risk. If people feel that they need to wear a mask, and if they believe that it works for them, then let them wear it. If they believe that it's protecting them, then they should wear the mask. Again, I'm hearing that there's some other towns, local towns near us. I know there's also, I believe the chapter in Hartford is also going mask-free. And I believe that enough is enough. We need to get on The kids need to learn how to speak. Then they need to see smiles. It's pathetic and it's sad. And I would like to see my children unmasked. I would like them to have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next I see Ali Passarelli.
Hello?
Hello,
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, sorry. So I'd like to speak in favor of parent choice when it comes to masking. As you know, I work in education, and living here in Guilford, the only time my child, because my little one's too young for a mask. Oh, sorry, my video is not on. The only time that my daughter is in a mask is when she's in school. I know one other person mentioned to keep it local. Keeping it local, we don't wear a mask. We go into the marketplace, we go into Amarones, we go down to the Green, we go to the Mooring when it was open. We don't wear masks anywhere in Guilford except for the school system. So keeping it local, let's keep with the local. It's beautiful, like someone else had mentioned, to see all of our restaurants filling up, people engaging in conversation. And I think it's time that we let the parents be parents again. That's my right to protect my child the way I see fit. Just like I'd like to say that it is that other gentleman who said, he's concerned about his younger one. It's your right to keep your child in a mask if you choose to do so. But just like I wouldn't push my beliefs and my systems on other people, I feel it's inappropriate to continue to push these beliefs on us who feel we shouldn't have our kids masked. So I would like to see parent choice.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I see Mary Beth Clark is next in the queue. I'm sorry, I skipped one. Kevin, if we could go to Ellie Katz next after Mary Beth Clark, please.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, we can.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. In the spirit of love, I just want to make a few comments. So I love hearing both sides of everyone's feelings, and that's exactly what should be most important. Let the parents decide and the children to decide what's best for them. I'm hearing a lot about younger grammar school, elementary school, but there's a lot of us that have children in high school and in Adams. And some of these children are 18 years old, have turned 18 and will continue. They can vote, they can go to war. They're going off to college, they have jobs. They're going to be going to the St. Patrick's Day parade. They're going on spring break. They're doing Pear Mission, they're doing Trinita. They're doing sports camps. They're all over the place. Particularly, there's a group that I know right now play with 6 other towns, all the way down to Norwalk, Darien, all through Madison, all over the shoreline. Kids are intermingling. They have jobs, and some of these jobs don't require masks. So, and a lot of us have siblings. So you're in and out of your home life with 4 to 5 other maybe people or children that are living in that home who don't wear masks. Yet I think we're under a false pretense just because they sit in a classroom with a mask on, they're safe. That's not really how it works. I am immune compromised. I've been immune compromised my whole life. I take good care of myself, and I am certainly not afraid of the pandemic. I was careful and I followed the guidelines and I followed the rules. And I agree that these students and parents should be allowed to make health decisions for themselves. We are in an endemic, not a pandemic. To someone's point earlier, Super Bowl, concerts. It's just sad that these kids who are 18 are still being told they have to wear a mask in school, yet they can sign up for the Marines tomorrow and go fight for our freedom. So something to think about on the older side of children, not just the younger base because the younger base is mixed in with olders. So I just hope we'll make the right decision as a town, and we follow the rules long enough. And I think the rules to have a choice would be the right decision. So I thank you for allowing us to come in tonight. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. And Kevin, we were going to go to Ellie Katz next.
Am I in? Oh, man.
Yes, hello.
Hey, I'll be really brief because everyone's making really good points. I'm also in support of mask choice. My kindergartner has been in a mask his entire school life. You know, it's time to move forward. If not now, when? I mean, I just don't understand. If we keep this going for another month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, we'll be here every month, and it's time to sort of end the debate, give people an option. Let's move forward and come together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I have Lauren Dennehy next.
All right, good evening, everybody.
Hello, Lauren.
Hi there. So I didn't intend to speak, but I'm listening to all this conversation and just thought I'd make a comment regarding the complexity of this whole situation. I don't actually have a personal request for you. It's just so clear how much anxiety our community is feeling about how to crawl out of the pandemic, the wish for it to be over, and the realities of its continuing. I speak tonight with my own 2 kids home positive, and they never complained to me about masks. But my older one cried so hard learning his long-awaited birthday party had to be canceled and sports paused while we're quarantined. None of this is straightforward. I want to thank our Board of Ed, who's been careful throughout this whole pandemic, managing the daunting task of marrying the psychological needs with the physical ones and prioritizing public health and research all along. That seems to be an example of education. As a mental health practitioner, I see how none of this is straightforward and it's completely gray. And I empathize for Dr. Freeman and the decision makers who didn't sign up to make these decisions. I'll just say that while the pandemic effects on mental health are so broad and disturbing, it's not necessarily a piece of cloth that's going to be fully to blame, but removing it thoughtfully should be part of the solution. I'm as ready as everyone else to drop the masks. I'm also conscious that we have to have conversations about the effects of this time alongside the resilience, that we think about all the factors and not play into a fantasy that dropping cloth is going to erase all these effects. We know there's a long road ahead to resume normalcy and help our communities heal. And on behalf of the many anxious children I see in my practice, I wanted to speak on behalf of them. How able we are as adults to convey caution, responsibility, good sense, and safety will help those kids also feel safe as we drop mandates and make careful decisions in the weeks and months ahead. So thank you all, and thanks for all the comments tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to pause this for just a moment. I want to apologize to the student representatives. Had I forecast this better, I would have asked the board to change the agenda. And I'm noting that one of our students does have to go. And so I sincerely apologize. Sean, thank you so much for coming. If you wouldn't mind sending a quick email sometime this week with your updates, I will make sure to share them with the entire board. So thank you. And I apologize to all of our student reps. I wish I had thought more carefully going into this meeting. Go ahead, Dr.
Balistraci, I'm just wondering if we could make that same offer to both Ruby and Jerry. That they're certainly welcome to stay to give their report, but they've now stayed longer than they usually do through their reports on a normal meeting. I think if you guys wanted to share your reports, you could send them to me via email and I would provide them to the entire board. if you guys have things that you need to complete tonight. I know that this is already running late for you and you haven't even started your reports yet.
So if any of you need to drop off, please do so. And then if you send me your reports, I will make sure they get to all of the board members because we are regularly interested in hearing all that happens.
That said, Dr. Balistraci, I see about 3 more people who appear to be looking to comment on either masks or budget issues.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The next of those looks to be Susan Kashoff.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm here. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm here with my begrudging husband, who, Christopher Rooser, who will hopefully speak after me. We're here as internal medicine physicians who have worked on the front lines since day 1 of the pandemic and 20 years before that. And like you, we are tired. We're all tired, and we all wish this would be done and that we could just move on. And we could have choice and we could choose to do what we want to do and live our normal lives. But unfortunately, that's not where we are. And forcing through something because we want it to be real will not make it real. So that has been my existence. And as Lauren Dennehy so beautifully stated, and I won't try to really say what she did because she did it much better than we can. Yes, the pandemic has been terrible. Rates of suicide, depression, substance abuse, anxiety, they've all gone up. But they've gone up because the pandemic has been terrible and because of the isolation of all the things that have gone on with that, not because of masking. And yes, masking has effects that are negative for folks that are trying to read lips. However, masking also works to prevent transmission of illness. There's no undoubted evidence for that. And I would say my husband and I are good evidence of that since we go to work every day wearing masks. We have not had any troubles with our breathing. Today, as I went up 5 flights of stairs with my N95 on, I thought, I'm in pretty bad shape and I did okay with this. So I'm not really worried about our children's lungs or their breathing with this. They're not 50 like my husband and I. And I would love choice. I'm all for choice. Choices that we have made throughout this pandemic. We've made choices to allow us to be cautious. And I would really appreciate not equating caution with fear. The precautions that we take allow us to take care of our patients who are vulnerable. So Chris, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just urge all of us and the board to be thoughtful about the timing of the decision and to set pretty strict criteria upon which we make the decision, as opposed to rushing to something because we're tired of this. It's only about 2.5 weeks now since the peak of Omicron, and despite high rates of vaccination, our hospital surpassed the number of admissions during the first wave in 2020. 3 weeks ago, we were struggling to keep the hospital running for staffing shortages, and we had almost 30 veterans on high flow oxygen, and we lost 2 of them during that last wave. So as much as we're tired, that is still very fresh in my mind, and perhaps we're just not quite there yet. I empathize with people who are tired of this and want it to be over. Just ask us to be thoughtful about the timing of this decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Jonathan Trotta, who was looking to comment. And Dr. Balistraci, if I am reading this correctly, this is the last Guilford resident looking to comment for the first time on masks or budget as you have requested. I do see some other folks who would still like to comment on Columbus Day. I see some folks who do not have Guilford addresses. And I see one person who's looking to comment a second time. I just offer that for your consideration. After
Okay.
Mr. Trotta comments, maybe we can decide if we're going to move on or open to those other voices.
I'm actually going to make a decision now. Mr. Trotta, thank you for your patience.
Good evening.
It is 8:40. We still have a large agenda in front of us. So I am going to close the public comment after this for this portion of the meeting so that we can proceed with the meeting. If folks were interested in topics not on the agenda, again, there's a public comment, public question at the end of our agenda, the last item, and you are certainly invited to come and speak at that time. Likewise, if you're asking to address us again, I'm going to ask you to wait to that time so that we can get to the other important work. This is important, but the other important work we have this evening. Mr. Trotta, thank you so much. Sorry to make you wait. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Palastrisi. I wanted to comment on the masks. I really think it's time for parent choice. And, I wanted to bring up an experience I had about a week ago. I was in a budget meeting, and our social service department is telling me that they want to expand staff and that their appointments for adolescents and young people who are feeling depressed and suicidal has tripled. And I just think we just be naive if we were to put blinders on and not recognize that these policies, this isolation, this mask wearing is affecting the kids. I think at the end of the day, everyone wants what's best for the kids. I think the pandemic is coming to an end. I mean, we have whole countries that are reversing their restrictions on COVID. Most states in the union have. And I just think it's a shame that these kids are still wearing masks. I think they're very, very much at a very extremely low risk to succumb to injury from the disease. Yet they've got, again, these strict restrictions that seem to be hurting them in other ways that are hard to quantitate. So I'll just try to be brief, but I just hope the school will consider that it's time to unmask these kids. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right. Thank you all for the input. I will note the next item on the agenda is communications. This is a point at which board members can note if we've received communications on these topics. I will note we have received some emails from community members who would like Guilford to consider going to mask choice if and when the state determines that they are not going to make the decision anymore. Likewise, we have gotten emails that have made different communications and asked us to keep masks. Are there other communications that board members would like to note at this time? Kristen, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, a couple things. With regard to the mastery program, we've received a handful of correspondences asking for a revised approach to the way the high school is planning on handling the mastery-based diploma assessment program. Let's see, we've received many emails about Columbus Day, asking us, as we've heard from a few speakers tonight, if we would consider keeping Columbus Day strictly Columbus and not merged with Indigenous Peoples Day. And you mentioned the masks. Thank you.
All right.
Katie, have we missed item number 5?
Oh, we absolutely have. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to ask. Thank you, Dick. I totally missed number 5. I'm going to ask for a vote to rearrange the agenda so that student reps can give their presentations. We would move that up. Then we would finish communication since I've already started it. And then we would go to review of expenditures. My apologies for going out of order. Is there a motion to move the agenda around so student reps can go now. Arnold, thank you. Jennifer, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful. Jerry and Ruby, my sincere apologies and my great appreciation for both of you hanging in there, and I will turn it over to you. Oh, Jerry, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
So first, at Melissa Jones School, students have been working hard in their school for over half the year now, and teachers have communicated their great growth with parents via progress reports on February 4th. And in music class, students have been experiencing a wide variety of music from different cultures. Second graders have been focused on the African nation of Ghana. Students enjoy singing Ghanaian songs, dancing to Ghanaian music, and comparing and contrasting school life in Ghana and Guilford. Melissa Jones students and staff wore red and pink tops for Spirit Day today, and they also spread kindness by exchanging cards in their classes. And one secret Valentine left a card for every student and staff member, and everyone was busy trying to figure out who this was. At Baldwin Middle School, last Wednesday, the Baldwin Middle School PTO sponsored a variety show. This event was held in the high school's Performing Arts Center and featured 14 acts, which included singing performances, unicycle riding, tap dancing, poetry, and more. This event was very well attended, and the kids who performed did an outstanding job. So many thanks go out to all the participants and to the PTO for sponsoring this amazing opportunity. Baldwin Middle School is also having their Spirit Days, and the Student Council has been very active in planning ways to build community and school spirit. As part of these efforts, the Student Council is sponsoring a Spirit Week. This week began today with a Valentine's theme of red and pink. Tomorrow is Guilford Pride Day. Wednesday, each homeroom gets to choose their own theme. Thursday is a throwback day, and Friday is pajama day. Students in grade 5 language arts are also engaged in a unit centered around natural disasters. In this unit, students use a variety of multimedia resources to learn about natural disasters, as well as read a variety of informational books on their self-selected topic, and engage in formal science talks with their classmates on their research questions, such as how do natural disasters affect the people and places that experience them? And students will also be participating in Zoom sessions with both the fire department and the FEMA to learn about natural disaster response plans. And lastly, at Guilford High School, as part of Black History Month, students have been honoring the struggles and celebrating the accomplishments of Black people in the United States by highlighting some of their stories each morning on the announcements. This has included pioneers of the medical field like Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, the first person to ever perform successful heart surgery, Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler, the first African-American woman to receive a medical degree, and many others. As the month continues, we look forward each week to hearing about more stories. And finally, winter sports are still going strong as many teams are beginning to conclude the regular seasons and enter the postseason. Good luck to all the teams.
Thank you, Jerry, so much. Ruby, go ahead.
At A.W. Cox Elementary School this month, the students are focusing on belonging, where they are working together with their school's social worker, Mrs. LeJeroman, to understand what it means to belong in a school community and in our local community as well. We all will be celebrating our 100th day of school tomorrow, which is very exciting. A.W. Cox has held a Team Spirit Day on Friday, where students and staff celebrated their favorite teams. Many of Guilford's sports teams were also celebrated. At Adams Middle School, winter sports have finished this past week, where all sports teams were very successful. The basketball team had winning records as well as the wrestling team, and were fortunately able to play in front of fans this year. Special congratulations goes to Sophia and Ava, who finished second and third at the Connecticut Middle School State Championships this past weekend. Seventh graders are continuing to work with the book A Long Walk to Water and are working on fundraising activities to build wells for villages in South Sudan. This has been a group work with the social studies teachers and the language arts teachers this year. During Black History Month, Adams is having a special focus on building healthy school community where everyone feels physically and emotionally safe, welcome, and accepted. everybody is focusing on each other's perspectives and respecting each other and trying to lean away from using any hateful words in order for there to be respect among the school community in Adams. This month, 8th graders will also begin to their process of transitioning to 9th grade, and Guilford High School will host an 8th to 9th grade parent-student transition meeting. At Guilford High School, the SpongeBob play will be showing shortly in March. I have been working on the set and things have been very successful. We are using materials that are very interesting, to say the least, where we are using tissue paper and paper to kind of use different contrasting for colors. And it is going to be a very, very fun musical. And today we had our carnation sale. The National Honor Society hosted one for Valentine's Day, where we sold more than 1,500 carnations.
Ruby, that's wonderful. A quick follow-up question. So you are doing set design then for the theater arts projection?
Yes, I'm in theater tech, one of the classes that is held at Guilford High School, where we learn about the different lighting, how different perspectives, how it's good for the audience members to see from different perspectives, and where every day right now we are actually building the set, and we get to do journals for our assignments to say what we're doing specifically for building the sets.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And Jerry, if I may, a quick question. Fencing team this year again?
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's been going well. Our senior night is this Wednesday, and we're going to be going into our conference tournament and states tournament soon.
Wonderful. Well, good luck. Good luck to both of you. Thank you again so much. And again, my apologies for the delay in getting you into the meeting.
Thank you both for staying so late tonight.
All right. We were on communications. Were there any last communications before we then go to the financial reports? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask Mr. Scretta to report on the financials. This was an agenda item in the Operations Committee just prior to this meeting, where it is frequently discussed in depth, but reported on here.
Sure. Thank you. So first of all, expenditures for the month of January were $5,197,505.89. That's expenditures and encumbrances. Total revenue for January was $19,267.95, which included $14,402 from the pre-K tuition, as well as $4,865.95 from Medicaid. The warrant being submitted for our approval today is $2,285,422.86. I want to be clear that basically everything with the budget, or with the financial report here, is essentially in line with prior years, with the exception of supplies and transportation, which have gone up now that we're in full in-person learning. One of the biggest items I want to draw everybody's attention to on the warrant itself is a very significant payment, $410,000 to Bank of America Public Capital Group. This particular item was for the energy performance contract, which was a contract entered into to reduce the energy spend at the schools. And it included infrastructural investments to basically reduce energy spending and reduce the carbon footprint, if you will. So.
Terrific, thank you. Again, detailed conversation in the Operations Committee prior to this. Any further questions or comments from my colleagues on the financials for the month of January? Seeing none, Is there a motion to approve the financials for the month of January as reported by Mr. Scretta? John, so moved. A second? Jennifer, thank you. All in favor? Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. Terrific. I think that's everybody. Next item on the agenda is your report, Dr. Freeman. Turning it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Balistraci. I do have only one item to discuss under the report tonight, and it is the item that has dominated much of the conversation already this evening. Obviously, there is a lot of interest in the mask mandate. At this point, what I would like to first update the community on is the timeline and some of the details around this. It is my understanding that just a few hours ago, the Connecticut Senate passed House Bill 5047, which the Connecticut House passed late last week. That now moves the expiration of the governor's executive powers from February 15th to February 28th. Included within those executive powers is the continuation of the mask mandate. With this bill passed, what now happens technically is that the commissioners of both the State Department of Education and the State Department of Public Health have the authority to extend that mandate should they see a need to do so. The expectation is that it is highly unlikely that they will extend the mandate beyond the 28th of February. However, both of those departments have also said that they will be issuing guidance to local municipalities and particularly school districts to inform school districts about any local decision that districts may choose to make. They have not released that guidance yet. At this time, I do not believe that it's prudent for us to make a decision one way or the other on masks until we see what that guidance will include. We have spoken to our local health authorities and medical advisors, and they agree that it would be prudent to wait to see what that guidance is. For instance, and I want to explain that statement, we've got a wide divergence in the levels of vaccination at different grade levels or different ages throughout the school system. There was some question earlier about the vaccination rate of our staff members. Staff and faculty, we estimate, are vaccinated at approximately 97%. At Adams and at our high school, we believe that our student population is vaccinated at approximately 90%. In our elementary schools and Baldwin, we believe that our student population is vaccinated at about 50%. We want to see if the guidance that is released from the State Department of Health and the State Department of Education has recommendations or guidance for school districts that may be tied to levels of vaccination. If, for instance, the DPH suggests that they are comfortable with masking by choice in settings where vaccinations are above 75%, but that they strongly recommend continued masking for settings that have vaccination rates below that, then that would have to inform any decision that we make going forward. So I suggest respectfully that we need to wait until we receive that guidance from the State Department of Education and the Connecticut Department of Public Health before we make a decision about what will happen with masking moving forward in the Guilford Public Schools. I want to be really clear that my suggestion that we need to wait for more information is in no way a suggestion that a decision has been made in one direction or the other. I simply want to wait until all the information is available. I understand how frustrating that is for people. It is frustrating for all of us. Data and information and guidance has been coming out very much at the last minute all throughout this pandemic. Again, the Senate only took action earlier today. I simply do not believe it would be prudent or responsible to make a decision on a topic as important as this, knowing that those two agencies plan on giving us at least guidance, if not recommendations and direction in the next few hours. And in fact, they still technically have the ability to extend the mandate themselves, taking away any local decision from us. And while I do not expect that to happen, they haven't made a statement on that specific. Other pieces that I want to make sure that I include in this, as I do believe that these are other important pieces of information or data points for us as we consider our decision moving forward. I do want to make clear that my understanding at this time is that the dropping of the mask mandate locally here in Connecticut will not impact the wearing of masks continuing on school buses. Currently, school buses, like all other forms of public transportation, trains, planes, buses, are covered by a federal mandate. And at this time, the decisions being made in Connecticut will not impact the requirement to continue wearing masks moving forward. I don't believe that I have heard that said in the local coverage in Connecticut. I believe it's an important detail, and I want families to be aware of that detail moving forward. That is a different decision, and that decision has not been made yet. It would not be a decision that we can make locally until that federal requirement is changed or dropped. I also want to go over some of our local positivity numbers just to remind everybody about where we find ourselves. In the month of September, we recorded 13 positive cases in Guilford Public Schools. That was among adults and students in our schools. We recorded 13 positive cases in the month of September. In the week ending January 15th, so I just changed our scale. I just went from a month to a week. But in the week ending January 15th, at the peak of the Omicron spike, we recorded 160 positive cases in 1 week between adults and students in our schools. In the week ending January 22nd, we recorded 82 positive cases. In the week ending January 29th, we recorded 46 positive cases. In the week ending January 5th, we recorded 34 positive cases. And in the week ending February 12th, last Friday, we recorded 31 cases. Please believe me, nobody recognizes the improvement from that week of January 15th to this past Friday as clearly as I do. I have seen the difference that this reduction in numbers makes in our classrooms for our staff members and staffing those classrooms. But again, I want to remind the community as we make this important decision. Last week, we recorded 31 positive cases. In the month of September, we recorded 13 positive cases. I offer that as a data point. And again, I want to wait and see if the DPH or SDE connect their recommendations to numbers of positive cases being reported, to levels of vaccination uptake in a certain population. I just want to see. I'm not clear at this point if the DPH and the SDE will make recommendations based on district-wide, only one decision for a whole district, or if they will encourage districts to make differentiated decisions based on grade level. And again, data like vaccine rates. So that is where we find ourselves today. We are still in the process of understanding the decisions that are being made in Hartford. We are still in the process of collecting data around those decisions. And it is not clear to us yet, it's at least not clear to me yet, what the next step for us will be, other than to gather that guidance from DPH and SDE, and then make very clear to our community what those next steps will be.
Dr. Freeman, or I guess the question is, as part of this consideration, there are, of course, protocols in place for what happens when a student is exposed to somebody else in the school system that is positive. All of the protocols that exist and all the assessments that exist for those things, per my read thus far, would remain in place regardless. Is that your understanding as well, or are we waiting for that information?
That is my understanding as well, unless the guidance and recommendations include any changes to those current protocols. And again, the commissioners would have the ability to make those changes. And then also, to be really clear, our procedures and protocols around notification of close contact changed as we returned from the winter break. Prior to winter break, we were informing parents of any close contact that occurred in the school setting. Following winter break, we no longer make those notifications. We do, however, notify parents when students appear to be symptomatic, and we now have local at-home tests available, and we make those tests available to parents when students seem to be symptomatic. We are only recording the positive cases that we are made aware of, and I do know that there is some concern among some health professionals that the prevalence of at-home testing now is having an impact on the accuracy of the positivity rates that are reported, because there's a possibility now of families becoming aware of positives, but those are done individually, privately at home, not through a lab. Therefore, the lab is not reporting directly to the state, and so that the reported number may not be as accurate as it may have been earlier in this pandemic.
All right, thank you. Do my colleagues have other questions or comments at this time? All right, so we will be watching at the state level what the decisions are coming out of the state, coming out of the State Department of Education, coming out of the State Department of Public Health, any additional information coming from the governor's office. If any of this requires the board to come together, either to get an update from Dr. Freeman or otherwise understand what the next steps are, that will likely require a special meeting unless we do not get sufficient information to our next meeting, which is, I believe, February 28th. I think just a note to my colleagues that we may have to call a special meeting at some point in the next 2 weeks. All right, thank you, Dr. Freeman, for that. Board agenda item number 9.1 is to act on personnel items. We do have note here of 2 upcoming resignations. We are being asked to ratify the resignation of the following teachers: John Cuddy, Guilford High School science teacher, 41 years of service in Guilford, really incredible. And Karen Mooney, Adams Middle School special education teacher, 34 years of service in Guilford. We cannot say enough in appreciation about the service that these 2 individuals have provided to our students in our district. Is there a motion to approve the resignation of these 2 teachers?
So moved.
Thank you. A second? Kristen, thank you. A second. Any comments before a final vote? Dr. Freeman, would you please extend our great appreciation to these 2 individuals? Some of us may have had personal connections. I know I had a child in John Cuddy's science class. Really a big thank you to both. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Excellent. Okay, do I have everyone? Great, thank you. All right. Receive 9.2, receive for possible action and update to the 2022-23 school calendar. Dr. Freeman, I understand there was an error in the calendar we approved last month or the month before.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this item was here only to make one specific correction. It was not coming forward as a result of communications that we had received. What I do specifically want to draw your attention to is in the month of January. January 1st falls on a Sunday, and we failed to recognize the federal holiday connected to New Year's Day, which falls on January 2nd, the Monday. So this calendar has only 2 changes to it. You see the addition of Monday, January 2nd as a day of no school to recognize that federal holiday, and it pushed the last day of school back by 1 day to accommodate for that. I apologize for the oversight. We just bring it forward to make that one correction. I do anticipate that we will have more comment on other calendar items later on in tonight's meeting.
All right. So again, noting the addition of and recognizing the holiday on January 2nd, which is a Monday, and that per this calendar, then the final day of school and graduation, unless there are snow days, will be June 16th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the calendar with this update?
So moved.
Thank you, Arnold. Second, Kristen, all in favor? Aye. Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And I again apologize for that error.
That's okay. All right. We are now up to the 2022-2023 budget. Just want to start this conversation with a couple of comments of I think where we are and some data points we learned from the Board of Selectmen at their meeting on February 7th. So we have in front of us a budget that was brought forth by Dr. Freeman and the administration at the beginning of January. It sits at the moment with a 5.9% increase. When we met last Monday night, February 7th, discussion around a number of items on included in that budget. Dr. Freeman proposed some places we might want to consider if we want to decrease. Of course, as I've noted before, there's always an opportunity to discuss an increase somewhere. And so we are going to go through those and other items that my colleagues may want to consider as we consider this budget. At the Board of Selectmen meeting last Monday, the Board of Selectmen put forth their town budget for consideration by the Board of Finance, and it sits at a 5.3% increase. It was noted during that meeting that the grand list for the town of Guilford has increased in a positive manner, which positively affects both the way that the budgets are translated into a potential tax increase for our citizens in Guilford. So when the Board of Finance, so let me say that the grand list per this discussion at the Board of Selectmen meeting is at 2.23% in raw form. When exemptions are considered and other adjustments are made for potential appeals, it is at approximately 2%. So when the Board of Selectmen budget at 5.3%, the capital line and the debt service are incorporated, and per their conversation last Monday, prior to obviously us tonight voting on any change, in their calculation with a 5.9% increase from the Board of Ed, that would translate into a tax increase of 2.35%. So that in essence, the grand list is having a positive impact when all of these things are considered together. So that is just information for anybody viewing and information for us. I am looking at spreadsheets here. So I am going to start us on a discussion of the budget and open this up to my colleagues. Again, there are a number of lines in the budget that I think we feel like are open for consideration. Dr. Freeman has introduced some of them. Before we get into going line by line through some of these items, do any of my colleagues have any questions about the process, suggestions about the way we go about this, or other comments? All right, I'm hearing none. Oh, John, go right ahead.
Yeah, real quick, Katie. I think, it's important to note for me personally, I don't feel comfortable going with a 5.9. I'd like to see us work together to get that, obviously lower so we can present that to the Board of Finance. We have all caucused. We've all spent time talking amongst, our caucus groups. And I think with some thoughtful conversation tonight, we could hopefully get towards that, towards a more representative number that we could push forward to the Board of Finance.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Other thoughts or comments? And again, just for the viewing public, those who haven't heard me mention this already, following our discussion and then a final vote tonight, this the budget that we vote on will be presented to the Board of Finance this Thursday night. The Board of Selectmen will be presenting the town proposed budget to the Board of Finance at that same meeting. The Board of Finance will then, over several meetings, consider both budgets. They will then vote and have themselves as a body the opportunity to reduce the budgets. They cannot line item the Board of Education, but they can say to the Board of Education, you need to reduce your budget by said amount. And at that point, we would take the budget back and we would identify where the additional monies being cut would come from. So that is the process. When that process is finished, there are another couple of meetings before it goes to referendum. Other comments before we start? Dick, go ahead.
As part of the context for the people who are viewing, of the 5.9% increase, only approximately 1.2% is on new educational expenditure. Almost all the other things are salary, heat, light, what we call structural budget, which we could, I guess, arbitrarily decide to cut if we needed to. But we're only making decisions tonight, realistically, about $800,000, $900,000 of the increases, so that our span of control of making decisions in reducing is relatively narrow.
Correct. Thank you. Okay. I would like to start the discussion with what I think is a very easy item to decrease because it is in fact a correction. So I am going to note this correction. Either Dr. Freeman or Mrs. Trudeau, I'm going to ask you to confirm that I have the right amount. But the mastery graduation requirement request for 2.4 FTEs noted in the proposed budget has already been identified as mistakenly higher than it needs to be. And I believe that $84,000 can be taken out as a correction. Is that accurate?
It is.
Seeing nodding heads.
That is accurate.
Okay. So that's where we're going to start. And then I am certainly willing to open this up to other items that people would like to discuss. Go ahead, Kristen.
Thank you. While I can appreciate the want of adding the elementary assistant principal, I don't feel that we can afford to do that this year. I feel like it's a pretty large ticket item at $138,000. So I would recommend that we consider eliminating that particular position. I don't know if other folks have thoughts on that.
Go ahead, Noel.
I agree with Kristen. While I realize that the the investment in or the add to schools is very low, 1.2%. The reality is we still have to face the fact that we have the increase for the health insurance. We can't simply ignore that. That's a real cost, and that is a real increase to the taxpayers. So while I would love to separate those costs and kind of put them aside, I know we can't control one of them. We still, at the end of the day, we have a limited amount of money, and the taxpayers don't have endless amounts of money. So we still have to be cautious, and we still have to address the improvements or the investments in light of the healthcare increases. And so I agree that, perhaps adding administrative costs is not something we should look at this year.
I know we've all done some careful and thoughtful consideration about, is there any of my colleagues who are interested in considering keeping the assistant principal position, elementary position in the budget for the coming academic year, or deferring consideration? Is there anyone who's interested in keeping it? We've heard from 2 colleagues who have noted the thought that this would not be the year for that inclusion. All right, I'm seeing none. Dr. Freeman, you're, at least in my view, your box comes on. Are you wanting to speak? Because I want to give you an opportunity. Oh, no. Okay,
No,
so I'm misreading the notes here. Okay.
That might be the only time I say that.
Okay. I will note that we had a couple of items in the budget that either in the initial budget or in Dr. Freeman's comments last week were related to funding potentially by the ESSER grant. So we have ESSER grant funding. It is presently funding a number of social work positions. This budget came to us from Dr. Freeman with the proposal that we take one of those social work positions out of the ESSER funding next academic year and put it into the budget, essentially keeping a position either way, but ensuring that as the ESSER funds are spent over the next 2 years, we don't find ourselves in a position trying to then take on a number of positions all at once. There is also a one FTE, one full-time equivalent special education teacher in the budget. It is in the proposed budget purely funded by budget monies. There was a consideration or a suggestion last week that it could be put onto or into ESSER fund grants if we were concerned about spending that money but wanted to keep the position. Is this an area where people are comfortable talking or speaking about at this time?
I didn't quite understand the second half of that. Could you just repeat?
I'm sorry. I realized as I was saying it that clarity is not my friend at this hour. Okay. We have a number of positions that are addressing, that have been brought to us because they're addressing real needs in our school. There is a one FTE special education position. It is in our budget. It is remaining in our budget. There is a noted increase in children who've been identified, and that this position, I believe for Baldwin and Lakes, would be addressing that increase. It remains in the budget. There was a proposal that it could be put into ESSER funds if we wanted, but at the moment it is part of the budget. So we want to consider whether we want to keep that position in the budget, and I'm noting it simply because it's a topic of conversation. The other position is a social work position. It already exists in our school. The decision here is to take it off the ESSER funds next year, which means we take it on as a budget expense so that we are not deferring all of the funding for ESSER granted or ESSER supported positions. So I'm opening up the conversation for both of these positions. I have heard great interest, I think, in keeping these positions. And I have heard interest in not putting either of them on the ESSER grant. So taking the social worker off and keeping the special education position off, so that we would not be deferring the cost of those positions. I hope that was clearer. Go ahead, Dick.
I'm in favor of reducing the budget, but I don't think these are items that I would want to keep pushing forward. We know we need them. Special ed and the social work positions have high value. So I would say that unless a case can be made about why we should cut that, why we should not pay for it now going forward, I would recommend that we don't do that and try to find other line items that we can cut from.
I would agree with Dick as well. I think we could try to move forward with other line items and see where we land there and assume that we could carry these forward with the ESSER grant and leave them in the budget for now and assume that we could hopefully find the numbers somewhere else.
If someone could explain to the public what ESSER means, because it's a federal and state funding thing. So maybe Paul can just tell us what the acronym means.
The actual acronym is escaping me at the moment, but the ESSER grant, there were 3 rounds of ESSER funds that were related to pandemic relief. We received first, there was a CARES Act. We received then the first round of ESSER. There was an ESSER 2, and there is now an ESSER 3. The dollars that we're talking about in ESSER 3 are approximately $900,000. And we have approximately 2 school years, possibly being extended to 3, in which to spend those funds. The plan to move these 2 positions into ESSER this year would allow us to hold the positions, would also allow us to cut this current operating budget, but buys a liability down the road. It makes it a larger increase in future years because there are other positions in that grant already. And we would be forced in a year or 2 to either adopt all 4 of those current positions into the budget or lose some of them or all of them. And so I would agree that while these are viable cuts, I would prefer to hold these off until necessary if there's a reasonable amount of cuts to be made in other areas.
Any additional comments from my colleagues on the suggestion to keep the special education teacher? And let me just suggest that we're going to go through these, going to give a total of where we are at particular points. So we will not make a final decision on any of these, but as we make decisions, we can revisit the whole list at the end. So
and Dr. Balstraci, it is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Excellent. All right. I am hearing interest in keeping the special education teacher, the proposed 1.0 additional special education teacher in the budget. I am also hearing interest in taking one of the existing social work positions off of the ESSER funds and putting it into the budget. Does anybody disagree with those 2 proposals? All right. There were a number of other areas, and I'm going to name some of the other lines we were considering and open up for conversation. There is one full-time equivalent STEM coach that is in the proposed budget. That has, I think, been a topic of conversation and could certainly be tonight. There have been also proposals to consider for reducing the budget from 5.9% down, a number of other lines that are not necessarily related to people or staff. The site improvement line is one. The legal line is another. The tuition line has been noted. There is this reduce student lunch debt. And then in addition, a couple of other lines that Dr. Freeman noted could be considerations. They are smaller ticket items. Equipment requests, professional development. There was a suggestion of, I believe, 8,000. Textbooks and Dr. Freeman, I'm going to have to ask you to help me on this one again. The LAP and workers' compensation insurance, the LAP.
LAP is liability and property insurance. I got that one. Workers' compensation is just what it says. And Dr. Balistraci, I would suggest that that one, while it is not a correction, it is a revised projection based on better projections from the insurance carrier. So I would suggest that that $18,000 is an easy take, and it's an adjustment we should be making.
Okay. If others, I can't imagine that any of us have a problem with that. That seems like a strong recommendation from our school leader. So we can certainly put that in the list. So I'm going to open it up for discussion on other things that I have noted.
Yeah, Katie, I'd like to note 3 that you specifically brought up, legal, site improvements, and tuition.
Okay.
And suggest cuts to all 3 of those, specifically site improvement and tuition. I'd like to see site improvement move down to 100,000 and tuition move down to 50,000.
Okay. I'm going to note for those watching that a $100,000 decrease of the site improvement line would pretty much be then flatlining that line from last year. There is a $98,000 increase in the proposed budget from last year. I will note that I feel comfortable with that suggestion for the following reason, that the district-wide playground that sits at Guilford Lakes, which is in the bond, which we are going to consider next during the meeting, has site preparation that often for other playgrounds, other of our school playgrounds, has fallen in this site improvement line, but is sitting now in the bond. It has been added to the bond and grouped together with that playground. So while normally I am in support of keeping this line intact and increasing it incrementally every year to keep up with our costs, that this seems like a reasonable suggestion. And John, I'm just going to mention, you also are suggesting a $50,000 from the tuition line. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We continue to, we continue to feel confident about where we are with tuition. I feel that 50,000 should keep us in a safe place. We're still being cautious with that line, but I think 50 is still being financially responsible to bring the budget down.
Do any of my colleagues have other comments on either of these 2 lines? Moira, go ahead.
I pretty much agree with what John is saying. The site improvement line, we have really been trying to make an effort to get that closer to, I believe it's like a 1% spend every year, and we're pulling back on that. But I feel better now that we know the playground has shifted to a bond item. I think that's why that number was larger this year. But just going on record that in the future budgets, it would be nice to create a healthier line for that in the future, but I don't think this is a year to do that. And I'm fine with the other items. And then the legal line, you had mentioned that, Katie, that it would be nice to see that brought down a bit. I know we had a really high expense on that this past year that we didn't really anticipate. But hopefully a lot of our bargaining group negotiations are completed this year. There will still obviously be special ed negotiations and other things, but if we could bring that down a bit, not, somewhere around $25,000-$50,000, that might be a logical place to also take a cut out of that.
I had suggested a $50,000 reduction. Even at that reduction, it still represents about a 20% increase in the legal spending from the current year to next. I do agree that it may be a little bit of a liability based on this past year's spending, but if we don't match this past year's needs, I think it's a reasonable increase and we will watch it closely. I would concur that 50,000 or 20,000, 25,000, but I would say all the way up to the 50,000 would be a responsible reduction to that line.
Okay.
No, you had your hand raised. Go ahead.
I agree with the minimum of $50,000 reduction for the legal line. As we know, a significant amount of the increase was due to Freedom of Information Act requests. It cost us an awful lot of money as a district to answer those requests. And I'm hoping that we're not going to pad our budget and allow taxpayer dollars to go to frivolous Freedom of Information requests. Some of them are important, but not all of them. So I don't want to build in a budget for that. And I want those people who are making those requests to feed their own egos to realize that every dollar that they make us spend on Freedom of Information Act is coming out of the children's budgets in some other place.
Other thoughts on, so I have a proposal for 50,000 from the tuition line, 100,000 from site improvements, and 25,250 from the legal line.
Katie,
Any
just
other comments?
right,
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
looking back, and the assistant principal, right? So we're kind of you're concluding.
Yes,
with
I'm
that.
happy to. I was focusing on that, but I'm happy to give
No,
people an
that's
update on where
fine.
we are right now. Okay,
That's
so
fine.
here's where
I
we
just-
are right now. For what I have recorded, I have a $84,000 correction to the mastery graduation requirement. I have a removal of $138,000 for the assistant principal position. I have $100,000 removed from the site improvement line. I have 50,000 removed from line. I have $18,000 as a correction to the LAP and workers' comp. Is it 50 I have? I'm hearing 50 and 25 from the, the legal line. With those reductions, those reductions add to, per my equations, $440,000, which reduces the increase from 5.9 to 5.19%. Are there other? Go ahead. I see hands. Sorry, I may not go in the right order. Go ahead, Jen. Jennifer, go ahead. Sorry.
I just have a clarification when you're talking about that with the numbers. Are you saying that we're taking out the STEM coach and the 2.4 mastery teachers as well?
So, no. Let me be very clear per what I think we have talked about and tentatively landed on. The $84,000 correction, that leaves the mastery graduation 2.4 FTEs in the budget per our conversation. It takes out the assistant principal at 138,000. We have not discussed the STEM coach yet, so it keeps the STEM coach in the budget prior to any discussion. It keeps the special education teacher that is proposed, the additional special education teacher. It removes the social worker from the ESSER grant, existing position, just a change in funding. It reduces the legal line by 50,000. It reduces the site improvement line by 100,000. It reduces the tuition line by 50,000 and corrects the LAP and workers' comp insurance line by 18,000.
Okay. I do
Moira,
have,
go. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
with that
Finish, go.
clarification, I do take issue. I would like to talk about two things, the STEM coach and the mastery teachers. I'll just take one of them. I'm going to go out on a limb on the mastery classes. We've had a lot of discussions about that. I know we're going to continue those discussions. I'm wondering if there's a way that we could, instead of just throwing 2.4 positions at it, I would like to see some positions put in there to help out the teachers that are in the high school. But I'm wondering if we could try it with 1.4 this year with the adjustments that are going to be made. And then if we need to consider another position, we do that next year when people may be more fiscally stable to do so.
If I can respond, I appreciate that comment from the feedback that we have heard. But financially, I suggest, so with the $84,000 reduction, those 2.4 positions are now scheduled at $125,000. If we were to bring in 1.4 positions instead of 2.4 positions, it would not be enough to cover the students in the class-based design that we have created. It would require us to then find other ways for teachers to support students in the independent study. And I need to adjust my suggestion last week. Last week, I suggested that if we went to a stipend-based program where students were doing the work independently and teachers were responsible simply for supervising that work outside of school, I had suggested we might be able to reduce that number further by 75,000. Mrs. Chaff couldn't wait to speak to me the next morning because that would require teachers to carry something like 60 students. I don't recognize that there would be a significant savings if we split the program and did 1.4 staff members and say continued to do the junior year in a class-based program, but did the senior year as an independent study. I don't know that we'd see a significant reduction in the 125 going from FTEs to stipends in order to ask teachers to be working with a reasonable number of students that they were supporting and advising outside of school.
And I'm gonna, if I may jump in and offer kind of a suggestion about the way I'm thinking about this at this point. We've gotten a number of comments from folks who have questions or concerns about the implementation of this program. However, we've also heard from our high school principal that it is the program has been in existence for one semester, and that she intends with her staff to talk to students who've been through the program, evaluate with student input and with staff how the program might need to be changed, how it might need to be tweaked. I am concerned that this is not as much a budget discussion as it is a program discussion. And my take home from our discussion last week, and I guess Dr. Freeman, a little bit to what you're saying tonight, is that we actually, from a financial perspective, are going to save very little money by rethinking this mastery graduation requirement, even as a kind of an extra after school, an independent assignment, because of what it's going to require to pay teachers stipends to monitor, support, encourage, and assist students to finish. Clearly, there are a number of questions around this program. And I'm going to offer the following suggestion: that we keep this, I'm sorry, Dr. Freeman, you just said what it is, the reduced line. We've reduced it to 84, but it's now 125, I think?
It's a new investment of $125,000 to meet the requirement in any way that we choose to meet the requirement.
So I'm going to suggest, because I heard what I heard last week about possibly reducing it somewhat, and then hoping we find teachers who are willing to take on a stipend and willing to monitor a host of additional students. I would like to suggest that we keep the 125 in the budget, because we are not going to reduce it by much by thinking about this program in another way. And I'm going to suggest that we as a board are not prepared to think about this program in another way without a lot more information from the administration on how they're thinking about this state leveled requirement, how they have experienced the program themselves thus far, what they're hearing from students who've gone through it, and how they might consider tweaking, adapting, changing this program based on what they have heard thus far and can continue to hear. I would really like this to be a topic at an upcoming Board of Ed workshop meeting where we can really dive in. But I guess I would just like to suggest that this is not really a budget issue. It's a state level requirement. Some amount of money has to go into it. And because I just don't feel equipped to make a programmatic decision from where I sit, I absolutely do not have enough knowledge or information or expertise. My own feeling is that we keep that line item in, but ask the administration to commit to further conversations with us. Moira, go ahead. Moira?
Thank you, Katie. I hear exactly what you're saying. I just want to kind of tail off of what Jen said, though. It's like we're building the plane as we're flying it. And as a parent who has a junior, I heard from so many parents of the junior class. I completely agree this is not a programmatic decision tonight. I think the concern of parents is that by funding it, we are sanctioning this model. And we are saying, this is the acceptable model, go with it. And I hear what you're saying. I agree. We need to sit in a CIA committee meeting and hear more about this. And I think the assurance the public needs is that if we move this money forward, that does not say that this design is what we all agree is the best design. And if at the end, it's found that we didn't need 2.4 staff members, that there's the flexibility to say that. I guess that's the concern I'm getting from parent feedback, is that by saying yes to this, we are saying yes to the design of the program. And so I think that's just the message I'm assuming a lot of the parents want us to convey. I agree with you. We shouldn't be discussing curriculum and design right now. That's not, but we're being asked to fund something before we know what it looks like. And hearing from parents who have juniors and sophomores who are learning about this program, there's a lot of trepidation about it and concern that there is a lack of flexibility in looking at unique and creative ways to satisfy this. And that's not a criticism. It's just that we're hoping that it will stay an open-minded, open process with parent and student feedback like you spoke to. So I just wanted to be on record as saying that, because I think that's the message that I keep hearing. And I just wanted to convey it tonight.
You had your hand up before. Did you have?
Well, I think you're right. This is heavily a program conversation, but it's inextricably a budget conversation. The question is whether the program can be justified budgetarily. And I've heard from parents all week, because I spoke about this at a previous public meeting, for the idea, and people were wanting to know what my reasons were, and their criticisms being that it takes too much choice away from students, et cetera, et cetera. They won't take their AP courses, they're going to miss study hall, they're going to miss electives. We have a state requirement. That's a given. Other districts, as parents have pointed out, are doing this, I would say, on the cheap. They're simply putting these students on the backs of current teachers. Some of what we're doing now, the quality of the program in terms of the spirit of its intent as a real mastery level, high level kind of capstone kind of project, I think is educationally laudable. And while we don't have as flushed out a program as we need, what we have been told is that minimally we need some more teacher help to begin to do justice to 600 students that have to get taken care of. And you can't do that by simply doing it by independent study with available staff. And I don't think you're going to find sufficient numbers of teachers who will take, who will do this even for stipends, number one, or much less do it over time. So that I'm arguing that what we have before us is as a good beginning programmatic response that is robust and begins to meet the intent of a high-level program. What it's configured as may be different from what we're hearing, but I actually question whether 2.4 will be adequate to begin with in terms of what's needed. But in the meantime, we're going to have a leap of faith that's going to take 1 or 2 or 3 years to put something in place that is substantial and really gives us a sense of what that means. We may be wrong, and we'll have to admit that, but I'd rather at least fund it sufficiently to make the experiment educationally the best it can be, and then not blame the funding for the problem.
Other thoughts? Kristen, go ahead. Sorry, I may not be getting people in the right order. I've got boxes in hands I'm trying to monitor, so my apologies if I'm not getting people in order.
No problem.
Kristen, go ahead, sorry.
God, I really agree with everybody. I think one thing we need to acknowledge is that the teachers have been pretty stressed and pretty strapped. I want to make sure that we are not overtaxing teachers because I want our teachers teaching our kids. So I'm in favor of adding the full 2.4 FTEs because I don't think it's going to make a tremendous budget impact if we cut it, number one. Number two, I think we've heard enough of an ask from our principal, from teachers, that they really need the full 2.4 FTEs to make this project, to at least launch the project. I agree with Dick. I think we're going to have to take a little bit of a leap of faith. I think we've got great people who design our curriculum, so I have a lot of confidence in Anine and the folks that are putting this together. So I think that we need it. I think that the teachers need it. I don't want to wind up asking a teacher to do, if someone's a creative writing teacher, I want them to focus on that, and I want them to focus on teaching those kids and not try to layer on something else and have people cut, I don't want people too thin where the kids that are trying to make headway in a particular elective or in some other class are not getting the attention from that teacher that they need because that teacher is getting pulled into teaching this mastery program. And what I also understand is that we can't double dip on credits. Is that right? So we can't wind up saying, okay, you're taking, I don't know, I'll just use creative writing again. You're taking your creative writing class. You can't get a credit and a half in creative writing. You can only get that 1 credit. So from what I understand, we can't wind up utilizing time embedded in another existing class to suffice for this new credit. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Yep.
Yes, I was muted.
All right. So just in summary, I mean, I agree. I think it's something that would be great to bring up at a workshop meeting. We've just really started hearing about it. The feedback that we've gotten from parents is that it needs to be examined. And I think all of that is great and we should commit to doing that. But I do think that for this coming school year, we need to fund it.
Other thoughts on this particular topic?
Sorry, can I talk? I just unmuted myself. Yeah, to echo everybody said, this certainly has turned into one of the most difficult discussions we've had. And I do understand it merits a lot further discussion as board members, but I guess just to clarify, I'm just not understanding because we were presented with a pretty detailed email from a constituent that did lay out that there are schools that haven't additionally hired and have incorporated it into existing classes. So I'm confused about whether this person was confused or how those schools, and again, we can talk about it another time, but clearly it does appear that there are a number of districts. There was a pretty detailed email that have managed to roll it into classes and allow it to be a credit to the mastery. So
I haven't been privy to that email. My quick understanding is that other schools may be embedding it in other non-credit bearing activities like advisory periods, other things, right? And again, my caution is that in Guilford, that we not try to layer it on to existing workloads that currently exist. So I do think that there continues to be other ways that we can address it. I think what's important for tonight is that we fund at an appropriate level. And then I know that the high school leadership and staff and even guidance department will be happy to have further conversations about what the design looks like moving forward. What is important in the budget conversation is that we provide a sufficient amount of monies to do good design work, whether it's the design work that's already happened or future design work. But if we reduce this number or bring this number down to zero, we're then left with the fewest options available to us.
well, then just to Moira's point, I guess the 2.4 FTE educators does just appear to cement the current model. And so there's no way to amend just how this is titled in the budget at this point. Sorry, I'm new to this.
No. I guess I'm going to suggest that the 2.4 doesn't cement the model. It cements a commitment to people resources,
right,
to help move the project forward. We know teachers are required, no matter how they're required. At the moment, the proposed model or the model that has been started has teachers in a classroom, students in a classroom with them, a few administrators taking on a few extra students to push them forward. If this became an independent study for each of the 600 students, that will require significant teacher resources to support those students. We have teacher resources that go into students who do capstone projects now. So I don't think, I'm going to argue that in no way does it underscore the model. It commits some budgeting to human beings who are going to be required, adult human beings who are going to be required to implement this requirement in some fashion at the high school.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The FTEs are always placeholders. We end up spending above or below those numbers every year based on, so I understand the message that it sends, but I would be cautious about changing it at this point.
Noel, go ahead. You had your hand raised.
I just wanted to ask, so if we approve it and then we do a deeper dive into the program, so we have resources to spend on some version of some program, and then we decide later that we don't need that amount of resources, we just simply don't spend the money, correct?
Correct. Yes. So kindergarten is the best example. Every year, in the last several years, every year we budget for 12 kindergarten teachers because we're anticipating that we're going to have 3 grades at each of the 4 schools. There have been years, just the most recent past year, where we only seated 12 classrooms. We did not hire 12, we only seated 11 classrooms. We didn't hire 12 teachers, we only hired 11. We don't spend the resources, even though we budget them, if they're unneeded. There have been other years that we've seated 14 kindergartens, and we had to find the ability, right? We found 2 more positions and funded those. So they're placeholders, but every year we will spend above or below that bottom line FTE total based on needs, changes, updates. Yes, it is a placeholder. We're not bound to either spend it, and we're not limited to not spend above that number if a new need arises. We just have to do it out of the approved budget.
Other thoughts or comments on this item?
And I will work on scheduling follow-on conversations. So I hear tonight that we're budgeting $125,000, but we need to speak either at a workshop or at a CIA meeting. about this program and how we will meet this graduation requirement.
Yeah, and perhaps not necessary to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because we are getting a number of people out to us as board members. So this is something we would really like to have an in-depth conversation about, to understand both the thought process on the present approach. I heard again Ms. Chaff note that she has plans, the high school administration has plans to learn from the students who've gone through it, et cetera. I would be very interested in hearing how they're thinking about what they hear, and what are possible ways to rethink the program based on some of the concerns we're hearing.
Let me piggyback on Christie's comment about hearing from parents who are alluding to other school systems doing it differently. This is what I mean by doing it on the cheap. The fact that this is first a program decision and then a budget decision is correct. And what I like about the approach this system that Guilford's taking is it's asking the question, what's the educational best answer to a requirement that's been laid on us? And then asking, how do you do that and what's the cost? As opposed to, how do we solve the problem so there's no cost or little cost and not worry about the impact? We can show the state that we're going to get these kids getting this credit, and we can do it in a way that in fact meets the literal requirement, but in spirit, it probably would not end up being the level of mastery that is being called for or ought to be called for. So what I like about this is at least we're talking about how do we make lemonade out of a lemon policy that we've inherited, and we're going to figure out what's really the best for students educationally. And the risk we're taking is $125,000 out of a $64 million budget. So I've gotten the same calls. I've gotten calls less about the money. In fact, people have said, we're not calling about the budget side. We're calling about the fact that we fear educationally that students may lose some choices about electives or study halls. And they were worried about that. I think those are legitimate questions. And I think those things will be discussed in terms of our coming conversations.
Other thoughts or comments? Arnold, go ahead.
Mine's a little more 30,000 foot perspective, but my philosophy with these reductions that we're talking about is that I would prefer that we maintain the human capital aspects to the greatest extent possible, and adjust sort of structurally as we can to get to the reductions that we need to get to. And so, that's why, at least for now, let's try to, and obviously this is with the exception of the assistant principal position, which seems to be a no-go with all of us for now. And we all kind of have our backs up against the wall because of the health insurance issue, which might not be the case next year. But for now, to the extent we can, I personally would like to see the human capital aspects preserved as long as possible. So that's sort of my stance on this.
Okay, so I summarize where I think we are. Again, with the correction to the graduation requirement line, 84,000, the removal from this budget of the assistant principal for the elementary, 138,000 removed, 50,000 removed from the legal line, 100,000 removed from site improvements, 50,000 removed from the tuition line, an $18,000 correction to LAP and workers' comp insurance, again, has us at the moment at $440,000 taken out of the proposed budget and has us at a 5.19% increase, down from a 5.9%. There was a STEM coach that was something that was discussed at one point. That is presently in the budget. I don't know if anyone was interested in discussing that. There were some equipment, very small items. I don't know if anyone is interested in any talking about any of those. Professional development, textbooks. I personally would prefer not to kind of take $8,000 out of professional development or textbooks, but I'm open to those conversations as well. Kristen, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, one item that I think we can pretty easily cut, it's not a huge one, is the student lunch debt. I think the recommendation was that we can eliminate that ask by about 10,000. And what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of that 10,000, and I would like to increase what we are giving to girls swim. They asked for, I think, 9,750, and we gave them 2,500. I would like us to cover their pool time expense. I know that our neighboring towns have pools at their disposal, so that's not something that we've got to ask parents to pay for in neighboring towns. I'd like Guilford to do the same. It's not a tremendous amount of money, and I think it would make a nice positive impact on the swim team who, spoke to us. The girls came and spoke, their parents spoke. It was a pretty big ask. We also heard from the ice hockey team, and I think that we've given them a little bit more than we have for girls swim. I think the total increase was 12,500, 10 of which went to ice hockey and 2,500 went to swim. So I would like to see swim increase to 6,000. So I'd like to subtract 10,000 from the student lunch debt, and then I'd like to add in 3,500 to go to pool time. That plus the 2,500 that we've already allocated will actually cover the pool expense for the swim families. It won't, I think, fund swim completely. I think there was still an ask for a diving coach and an assistant coach. But I think if we can at least cover the pool, that would be something I feel obligated to do as the Board of Ed. Any thoughts on that, folks?
Oh, go ahead. I have a question, actually. Obviously, Jake is not with us tonight, Jake Jarvis, and is not expected to be, let me be clear. I guess the question is, when various teams, so Dr. Friedman, I guess I'm going to throw it to you, when various teams came to us with different requests, you came back, no doubt having talked with some of your administrators, with the proposals you came back with. And I'm guessing it wasn't random, right? So I just want to, I think ideally we've heard, actually, Dick, I believe, has talked about this most eloquently, right? If we believe in the educational and social and emotional and physical value of athletics, it would be great to know all of this. But was there an approach to your decision making that we should be aware of, or approach to where you landed, or where Jake landed, or where someone in the administration landed in what came to us?
Yes, the decision, there's only one assistant coach being added to the budget this year, and it is being added in girls swim. And then the decision around trying to contribute more to both pool time and ice time, which impact 3 teams, right? There's both a boys and girls hockey and the girls swim. The recognition there was to try to move in the right direction in all cases. Hockey makes the argument that they've had no increase in the last 20 years, and the ice time is a more expensive, just in gross, it's a bigger number. And so there was more monies put there because of the length of time. They've been accepting that contribution static with no increase for 20 years, and the cost associated with both of those teams. The swim team is still moving through that period of time where the initial ask 6 or 7 years ago was that, you know, a group of parents coming through said, we just want to swim under the banner of Guilford High School, and we're not asking the board to invest a dime. We will take care of the expenses. Obviously, since that time, those parents have graduated out with their students. That original group is no longer here, and we've been taking on the cost of swimming at a faster clip than we have for, say, the hockey team. So the suggestion, the logic behind the numbers that you see was recognizing the scale, the gross cost, and how long it's been since we've made steps in the right direction for the hockey team as compared to the swim team.
Arnold, were you about to speak on that? I don't want to call on you, or I want to make sure I see hands raised. Moira, you have your hand raised, I think. Sorry, I'm trying to read boxes. I'm not always doing the best job here. Boxes on Zoom. Go ahead, Moira.
Well, I can appreciate comparing the two sports. I think we need to be careful in doing that sometimes because they're different sports. And, you know, I understand the timeline, and yeah, hockey, definitely, we should have owed this to them I don't want to say, but we should have been planning for this for years ago. We just never got it brought to our attention. So there's a definite need there, but the swim team, the girls swim team has grown. They already have a larger team. The coach is actually like a safety necessity. I mean, you can't have that many girls in a pool and expect one coach to have eyes on everybody. The idea of the lunch debt, that's a really creative idea that Kristen presented. I think that, well, I understand not wanting to create precedent around, you know, we want to see teams grow and we want to encourage that, but we want to see the kind of build their roots and get their legs about them, literally and figuratively, and have the program grow. This one is growing. I mean, the girls had an amazing season. So I'm not against if we can garner a few $1,000s for a really strong growing team. In the big picture, I'm not against that, I guess what I'm saying, but it's not a hockey or swim. I like to kind of I think we fall into that trap sometimes of comparing the athletic teams and trying to be balanced about it always. Absolutely. But I don't know. I just wouldn't die on this hill about this comparison.
I'm not opposed to adding the money either. I wanted to answer the question and our logic and how we brought it forward.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Dick, go ahead.
This is a wonderful example that we get in other situations about the difference between equity and equality. If we were to treat sports equally, then we'd give a set amount of money to each sport and that would be it. If we worried about equity, that is what is fair, we have to simply acknowledge what has been said by Moira and Kristen. The costs of sports are different. The cost of science labs is different than the cost of a bigger classroom. And that's just the name of the game. And you ask the question, if we believe further that athletics is more than simply a necessary evil and an extracurricular that you've got to just put up with culturally, well, yeah, then you can minimize it. But nobody questions what we're spending on football or basketball, or that is what I would call the historical sports. And the fact that this school system has a lot of sports, but a lot of students taking it. And we believe that if it's done right, it's educationally and emotionally beneficial, then it seems to me we should, on principle, try to fund as many of the sports that we have already sanctioned, whether we liked it or not. We did sanction them as go ahead, even if you raise your own money, they're ours now in some sense. So I would say to the degree each year we can move towards giving as close to full funding for each sport as we can afford is the principle. And in that spirit, then Kristen's recommendation makes sense because it simply increases the equity on this. I just don't think personally that some parents should be spending $800 a year and some parents are spending $50 to $100 a year or nothing for their kids are putting the same number of hours in and heartache. and getting the same benefit. The swimming conversation is nothing but an example of the larger issue that we've got to deal with eventually on athletics.
No, go ahead.
So, I agree with a lot of what Dick said, and I also agree that I would like to fund the girls' swim team more than we've called for. But there is a certain amount of equity versus equality. And, when I saw the breakdown of the cost of hockey versus the other sports, I was all for funding everything. I was going to say, just fund the teams, no problem. Give them more than what the AD asked for. Until I saw the cost of hockey, boys hockey, compared to the second most expensive sport, which is girls hockey, and boys hockey on a per player basis is twice as expensive as girls hockey. I have no idea why, and I admit I'm totally ignorant. And I like hockey. I went to Notre Dame High School. We lived and breathed hockey. I love hockey. I couldn't wrap my head around how expensive hockey was on a per player basis for boys versus girls hockey. That's the same sport. They have the same practices. They have ice time. They have the same equipment. I don't know what the difference is, but I was shocked. So, I'm happy to give them more money because, these kids work hard. I happened to run into them getting on the bus before one of our meetings there. I guess they were going to practice. I asked them where they were going. They were great kids. All of them were like excited, enthusiastic, having fun. This is no reflection on. I need some answers as to why boys hockey costs twice as much per player as girls hockey. There has to be some effort put in to figure that out. It was mind-boggling to me.
So I'm going to suggest that if we have kind of some of these remaining questions, we could certainly, I think Dr. Freeman asked to have a discussion about how athletics is funded and how our athletic director kind of thinks about these things, et cetera. I know we've asked for some of the details, and Noel, you're referencing some of the details that we've gotten. I'm going to be honest and say I'm a tiny bit now confused and need some clarification of the suggestion that is on the table for this. While I really, I think we all would be really interested in always funding these teams in an equitable way. I don't feel prepared to know exactly what that is tonight. And I get I'm just gonna be honest and say, I get a little nervous about deciding that we do have a good handle on that. So I guess first, I'm open if people want to talk first, but I'm going to need some clarification of the suggestion that's on the table.
Well, I heard two concrete suggestions, if I may, and I do want to separate them a little bit. So I did hear to reduce the student debt by $10,000. That was a suggestion that was made last week.
Mhm.
And then I heard increase pool time by a dollar amount. And we can certainly do both of those. I would just, to a point that got made earlier, I would simply reduce the student lunch debt as a part of our rolling reduction, so that now our rolling reductions go to $450, and then I would add an increase for pool time, but I would not tie a specific increase to a specific reduction, right? So I would simply ask if I could just hear the increase for pool time. What would be the net increase over what we've already budgeted? Was it 6,000 or was it
3,500?
3,500.
Great. So what I heard is that we reduce the lunch by 10,000, and then we add in an additional 3,500 to what we've been discussing so far. And so now we're at 450,000 minus 3,500 for the reductions that we have cataloged so far this evening.
Right.
That is correct.
I just have a math issue. Can I just ask one question?
Of course.
Going back to that mastery program, I'm trying to remember, and I've been looking all over. That's what I keep doing when I'm here. I believe the initial ask was for 240,000 on the initial paperwork, right?
No, I believe it was 209,000.
Okay, then that's my math issue. Okay.
Yep, and we reduced it to
Never mind.
125.
Yeah, because I had that we were actually saving 115. Darn it.
Would have been better.
I know. Thank you.
Go Jennifer.
Trying.
Okay, we are at, again, a net $446,500 increase, which puts us at 5.18% increase down from 5.9. Are there other things that people want to talk about? Dick, go ahead.
I would like to move, or at least suggest, that given that we've now reduced the budget we have some control over by almost 50% of what was asked, that we've gotten to a point that I think is responsible and that we should move forward with what we've just done. That is, I'm not sure that much more time trying to cut will be worth the amount of time we've got left, because there's very little left that we haven't discussed. So the 5.18 seems to me to be a very good faith effort to bring our budget down to a balance between good educational decisions and fiscal prudence.
It is worth noting that should the Board of Finance choose to lower that bottom line further, we will have to reconvene and identify other areas to absorb any further reduction, right? They just pick a number, and then we would have to find the specific reductions to make up that number should they take further action moving forward.
Dick, was that a motion?
Well, if a motion is in order, it is.
I'd second that motion.
All right, so because there's a first and a second, and to be clear, Dick, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are making a motion to, based on the reductions and the addition that have been discussed this far,
yes,
to put forth a budget that would, I'm going to say it this way first, and then have us vote on the whole package. The emotion, it sounds like that's in front of us, is to reduce the budget by 450,000, add in an increase of 3,500. So reduce by a net of $446,500, which would represent a 5.18% increase. So Dick has made a motion and John has seconded it. It is now open for discussion before there is a vote.
Yeah, Dr. Balistraci, the only thing that I would suggest is that I think we could record the motion as a net reduction of the budget of $446,500 as discussed, resulting in a new bottom line budget of, Linda?
You took the words out of my mouth.
I think we want to.
Okay, so the new budget would be $65,629,734.
I'm sorry, my Bluetooth is dying. Could you repeat that?
$65,629,734.
Thank you.
65619,734. Is that what you have? 656. Sorry, 65,619,734. Is that what you have?
No, I have 65,629,734.
Hold on, I'm doing something wrong.
Let's check the two spreadsheets. I'm using a piece of paper and a calculator.
I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you now to repeat, Linda.
65,629,734.
Correct. That was my error. I added an extra. Okay, so there is a motion on the table to reduce the budget brought to us by Dr. Freeman by $446,500. This would then equate to a proposed budget of $65,629,734, which represents a 5.18% increase over last year's budget. So there has been a motion and a second, and I am now opening this for discussion.
And Dr. Balistraci, I'll just note that while it doesn't need to be part of the motion, we will adjust your detailed budget sheets to represent the conversation and the decisions that were made here this evening. We will document all of those individual decisions in the detail sheets for the budget moving forward.
And I will actually repeat them before we make a final vote.
Great.
So I am opening it up for discussion, the motion and the second.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
We moved off of the sports, and I just want to confirm what we agreed to. Can we just confirm that, please?
This motion reflects an addition of 3,500 to the swim team.
And continues the hockey with the recommended amount?
Yes.
Yes.
Does not change the recommended amount.
Okay.
And we had confirmed for you prior to the meat of this budget conversation that we will schedule either an operations or a workshop meeting later in the school year to discuss more holistically the athletic spending in general. And we will get an early start on that before this school year ends, so that we go into next budget season with more knowledge and more momentum around that topic writ more broadly.
Okay. And one more question. What you just presented as a 5.18 increase, that includes continuing the STEM coach, correct?
Correct.
As the list stands now, yes, the STEM coach is kept in there. I saw other hands raised. Kristen, go ahead.
Just one quick comment. At a 5.18%, I just want to point out to anyone watching this that that's really only a 1% increase to kind of student touching initiatives. And that even includes like heat and electricity. Like we were at, I think 4.18 was just medical and salary increases.
That is correct. That is correct.
As much as this is a big number, it put in perspective with the pieces that this board really has no control over, this is not a huge ask.
Others? I want to note, Kristen, kind of following your lead there. Again, the medical benefit line alone is 2.4% of this increase. As Kristen just noted, that other benefit increases and then a 1.57% increase in contractual salary obligations that we have brings us to a 4.18 per my calculation. I also, again, want to note that we have had conversations about this medical line, great concerns about this medical line. We have had conversations and meetings with Joe Spurgeon, who is our consultant. We have not gotten any updates from him. It is possible with updated numbers that that line could potentially go down. And we want to assure the public that if the town and the Board of Ed, and it would be a joint communication because we are in this together essentially, hear from Joe Spurgeon, that information would be translated immediately to the Board of Finance, so any adjustments could be made. We are really keeping a really careful eye on that line. Are there any other comments? Again, there's a motion and a second on the table. If there are no other comments or questions, I am going to then call it to a vote. Again, the motion is to decrease the draft budget proposal brought to us by Dr. Freeman by $446,500. This would result in a proposed budget of $65,629,734, which represents a 5.18% increase. This is down from the 5.9% increase that the draft budget proposal brought to us represented. So I'm now going to ask for a vote on that motion. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Arnold 1, Jennifer 2, Katie 3, Kristen 4, John 5, Christy 6, Noel 7, Moira 8, Dick 9. That is a unanimous vote to bring forward to the Board of Finance this reduced budget. And I'm just going to repeat Dr. Freeman so that, and Linda, so we're all on the same page of what that $446,500 represents. It is $84,000 correction to the GHS mastery graduation requirement line. It is the removal of the assistant principal at the elementary level for $138,000. It is a reduction to the legal line of $50,000, a reduction to the site improvement line of $100,000. It is a reduction to the tuition line of $50,000. It reduces the student lunch debt line by $10,000, and it corrects the LAP and workers' comp insurance line by $18,000, and then adds $3,500, I guess essentially to the athletic line for the
pool rental.
for pool time. Is that specific? Let's be all very clear. Is that specific to the girls' swim team or the swim team?
It is currently specific to the girls' swim team.
Okay,
Our boys,
I just want to be clear.
is part of a cooperative agreement. We don't incur pool costs as part of the cooperative agreement with the
Okay,
boys.
I just want to be clear for our viewing public. Does that align, Linda, with what you have in front of you? Thank you. I've seen your head nod. All right. I want to thank my colleagues. This has been a very difficult year, I think. Certainly for me, when a 5.9% is where we're starting, and when a 2.4% is just on medical and so kind of so out of our control, so to speak. All right, we have now to go to possible action on the proposed capital bonding request. And Dr. Freeman, if you wouldn't mind, or Mrs. Trudeau, you made a correction, I think, to the bonding page last week, and I'm not sure I have it accurately here. We have a bonding estimate, I just, again, want to make sure that I have the accurate final number. I think there was just an addition problem on our page.
Yes, the individual projects were accurate. You should be looking at a bonding package request with a bottom line of $3,885,391. Linda, is that an accurate bottom line?
Yes, it is.
That includes discrete projects. Dr. Balistraci, would you like me to go through the discrete projects?
That would be terrific. Thank you.
Yep. That includes renovations at the Guilford High School tennis courts for the amount of $738,120. Renovations to the Baldwin Middle School kitchen area for a dollar amount of $1,520,534. Renovations at the Cox Library in the amount of $82,416. Playground work to be completed at Guilford Lakes Elementary School in the amount of $325,380. This will include site work for the entire playground and equipment and installation cost for the pre-K and K portions of that playground. The Lakes community will be covering the equipment and installation costs for the grades 1 through 4 portion of that project. Additionally, there are renovations to be conducted at 595 New England Road in the amount of $993,888. And then there are architectural and engineering fees in the amount of $225,053 for a complete bottom line bonding request of $3,885,391. That bottom line had been inaccurate in our first presentation to you. All of the individual projects were accurate. We just did not carry the costs down and tally them accurately. That is an accurate total number at this time, at this moment.
All right, are there comments or discussion on the bonding, capital bonding request that has been put before us?
And we did discuss this to some degree at the operations meeting, but I'm sorry, Noel was raising a hand and I just started talking.
And I unfortunately was unable to participate in that meeting. So I'm just going to, Noel, have you ask your question?
So while I originally was concerned with the renovations to the offices, overall, I like the idea of consolidating into one space. And as long as we are considering as a town, I know that we have no control over this as the Board of Ed, but I'm saying this kind of to make a point in the recording, that as long as we are willing to sell the house or otherwise that you're currently occupying, I forget the name of the house, in front of the library, the Lathrop House. If we are willing to sell that property or lease that property or in other way generate revenue from that property to offset this cost, then I'm very comfortable, and I think it's a good plan to go forward with the renovations to that building. I know that it was planned for all the way back to when the high school was designed, and given my position at the state, I see how all the other schools are doing this, and they all do the same thing. They like to have their BOE on site with teachers, with the kids, and it just makes sense. So my initial hesitancy has been defrayed. So thank you.
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
And I just want to be clear for the viewing public. No, when you talk about we could sell, we're talking about from a town and a community perspective, not just a Board of Ed.
Yes, that's why I said we have no control as a
Right,
Board of Ed, but
right.
I'm assuming that the town will defray some of these costs with the sale of the house.
Yes, terrific. I just want to be clear that this is the we encompassed a community in the town. Other comments, questions, suggestions? All right. So hearing none, I am going to ask for a motion to approve the capital bonding request with the 5 projects, 6, including the A&E, for a total of $3,885,391. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Arnold, is there a second? Dick, any further conversation or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
I have Arnold, Katie, Jennifer, Kristen, John, Christy, Noel, Moira, and Dick. So that is a unanimous vote in support of moving this bonding request forward to the Board of Finance as well. Again, I just want to thank the community who has been following this, those who have joined our public comments to comment on some of these decisions. Again, I will note that these will be forwarded to the Board of Finance. We will be presenting these to the Board of Finance on Thursday evening, this Thursday, the 17th. I believe that meeting is on Zoom. The Board of Finance also holds a public comment, not not this, I don't believe, although I will be corrected and I will check, but several times over the period of their deliberations. So I encourage community members who are interested in following that process to go to the Guilford town website, which has a calendar and identifies agendas, town meetings, the time, and materials. All right, we are up to item 10 on the board of agenda, which is reports of committees. Policy committee, do you have anything to report tonight?
No, I think we covered everything that we had in our last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Operations committee, anything further? I know you met earlier this evening.
Nothing further, just a quick recap. We had a very good report from dining services. We continue to turn a profit. Meal counts continue to be much higher than they were last year, and we have increased reimbursements from the USDA. In terms of tuition, it remains under budget. Great facilities update from Cliff, and that's a good short update. We'll keep that down.
That's terrific. Thank you. Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, anything to report?
Yes, we met January 31st, had a report from Dr. Don Seiler regarding his interviewing and speaking with faculty, students, administrators with regard to our concerns for equity and inclusion. And he reported and gave us a written report, which is, I think, now on our website. And it was a full report. In essence, it said that we've been making some progress. We are generally in a positive stance. There are improvements we can and should make. He noted those in the report, and that he noted that we had committed ourselves to now move forward the next step.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Any liaisons to town committees have anything to report on this evening?
Nothing to report from land acquisition.
All right. Anyone else? All right. And then liaison to Learn Board of Directors. Kristen, do you have any report for us tonight?
Yes, we had our meeting on Thursday, which was really interesting. We heard from the superintendents of Groton Public Schools, which is a really interesting kind of diverse population where they've got a really transient group of students associated with the military projects out that way. And then kind of their more traditional kids that are, you know, that live and stay in the town. So they talked a lot about how they work hard on inclusiveness and making sure that they have a really balanced school down to the classroom level. So they said that they're really paying attention to everything from gender to socioeconomic to race, so that they feel like they've got this fabulous little melting pot of students out there, and they really are keenly aware of how to blend that as best they possibly can down to the tiniest level that they possibly can. So I thought that was interesting. And then they also spoke about their international baccalaureate program that they interestingly start in the middle school. They call it their MYP. It's their middle years program. And I sent everyone on the board a little video that they sent to us, which it reminded me of that curriculum and assessment meeting that we had, I think 2 years ago, where we heard from the social studies teachers, where it made me want to go back to school. Like, it just sounded so cool. Like, they talked about how these students are kind of working on these project-driven initiatives in small groups, and how it just has this global sensibility to it. So the kids are supposed to start learning how to view themselves on a more, as part of a global world, as opposed to just the minutia of their small town. So I just thought it was a really interesting session. And then from Learn itself, the executive director's report, she has some interesting possibilities in terms of eliminating as much invoicing as she needs to do to each district through an SB 948 magnet funding program. So we're interested to see how that shakes out at the state level. It may be something that helps us reduce tuition costs even more. And let's see, that was about it. She had a great report too. They're really low on their COVID cases, which was great. And she, much like our conversation from Dr. Freeman earlier, is not quite sure where her magnet schools are going to wind up landing in terms of masking. So that's still a TBD on, and that was kind of the general consensus from all of the different Board of Education members who attended that meeting last week. It was a really similar conversation to all of the people that we've heard from tonight and to what we are all going to inevitably wind up thinking about and contemplating. So that's it from Learn.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so the last item on our agenda is public questions. If there are folks who want to address the board, this would be a time that they can do so.
And Dr. Balistraci, we've cleared the queue out from earlier. We will need people to re-enter their name and address into the Q&A box. That will form the queue for public comment. This way we'll ensure that we're not missing anybody by trying to comb through the previous list. And I do see Brian Wiley is first in the queue. Anybody else who would like to comment to the board, please add your name and address in the question and answer box.
And I am going to ask, because I think it is very helpful for the board and certainly for the viewing public. If you are coming to us and you are not a Guilford resident, I'm going to ask you to identify that for us. It doesn't mean you can't speak. It just helps us understand who we're hearing from. Brian, I know you are a Guilford resident. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I think I need to adopt Paul's hairstyle. Mine's not working for me this evening, so I apologize for that. Jason, quick question. When you hold up the whatever piece of paper, what does that say? Time's up or 1 minute or?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is something that I'm supposed to be paying attention to, and a yellow piece of paper means there's 30 seconds left. Again,
Thank you very much.
We are trying, right. We're just trying to make sure everyone has a chance to speak.
It's as late for me as it is. Well, you guys are good at this and you get paid so well to be on the board. Thank you very, very much for everything you do. Comments on two areas, one sports funding and the other, my favorite, the mastery topic. So just briefly on sports funding, a suggestion, not plus or minus anywhere, but Noel discussed it briefly. I've been involved in far too many sports, far too long ago, quite frankly. But one thing I'm aware of, having been on both sides of the economic equation, I guess all four sides, different sports cost different amounts of money. I've played football, I've wrestled, I've played hockey. Some are very expensive, some are much, much less expensive. I have a child who's involved in one of the supposedly less expensive sports, but be amazed how fast running shoes wear out. My general suggestion is to do what Noel did when you're looking at the sport. Yes, as I think Moira mentioned, different sports do cost different amounts, but an assessment of the per student cost would align very nicely with some of the arguments we make and we made when we're getting this wonderful high school built, the cost per student. You can't ignore that. A more expensive sport is going to cost more per student. There needs to be an allowance for that, but there needs to be some sort of a comparison, whether it's equity or equality. I confess I'm not entirely sure, but take a look at not just the net cost, but the net cost per benefited individual, and make that a regular fundamental part of your consideration if you're not already doing so, which you may be. So there's a thought. Second thing on mastery, I respectfully and without much data do not necessarily agree that Simsbury, Westport, Greenwich, and Madison are executing their programs on the cheap. They are not noted for that, quite frankly. They may be doing so. I don't know that for a fact, but I would suggest that maybe they're being more cautious in their initial implementation until they've built up a program. Now, why they need to do that, since this has been a public requirement for over 4 years, I'm not entirely sure. But my question would be, I do favor additional, by the way, additional staff support for this sort of a very worthwhile endeavor, again, if it's done right. I don't know how the board plans to keep an eye on this, because you can't micromanage, Paul, obviously. On the flip side, It's a huge job. Everything isn't going to get done perfectly.
Yeah,
And
Brian,
you do have an administrative oversight responsibility. Is my time up?
it is. And so I am just going
I'm
to say
done.
that one of the things we made a commitment to tonight is to have dedicated time in an upcoming workshop meeting, at least one, to discuss this in depth. So I think that I hope what you heard from this board is a commitment to following through on the concerns we're hearing. Thank you.
I hope so. My last observation would be, yes, there's a leap of faith required, but one could argue that a leap of faith was taken a year ago without you knowing it, and the program is in its current form.
Well, again, we are committed to having discussions about its continued implementation. So thank you.
I see Joseph Catanzaro looking to comment.
All right.
Hello, once again.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good myself. How are you, Madam Chair?
Good, thank you.
So my name is Joseph Catanzaro. I am a town councilman in the town of Plainville. And also I am the president of the Italian American Alliance. And I came here because of what I've heard about combining Columbus Day along with Indigenous Peoples Day. We work with many coalitions, such as, the organization I run has over 7,000 people. The One Voice Coalition, the Native American Guardian Association, UNICO, Order of the Sons and Daughters of Italy. And when they all heard of this situation, or several situations around the state, they're upset, learning that Columbus Day is either being merged with Indigenous Day or that they are canceling Columbus Day altogether. The Italians, along with the Indigenous, feel like it's a little bit disrespectful, kind of like we're getting half of a day. And both cultures, from my experience, what I've spoke, because we line up with Indigenous as well, we're with a few of their coalitions, and of course we have our own coalitions. Both coalitions don't want to merge day. So both cultures and both entities are confused as to why one would merge that. Even that they said, like one of their leaders, Tony Henson, he said, I wouldn't even want my Indigenous peoples, he was an Indigenous, I don't even want Indigenous Peoples Day on the same day Columbus Day. We have respect for other cultures. We would want it on a different day. So I just asked that, Columbus Day continue to stay Columbus Day, and that Indigenous get their own day, because they don't like that either. They're semi, offended by it. So hopefully you could find some resolution to that and change and give them their own separate days fully. This is kind of what I do. I go around the state making sure, everybody's peacefully together. But and I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see Matt Guinieri, who is waiting to comment.
There we go. Hi, Matt.
Hello. As you know, I'm Matthew Guarneri. I'm president of the Italian American Defense League, and I'm also a Guilford Public Schools educator. I'm here to speak to you about the board's decision to change Columbus Day to Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day on next year's school calendar. I intended to thank Dr. Freeman, Chairperson Balistraci, and members of the board for adding school calendar to the agenda. During the November 8th, December 13th, and January 10th meetings, every change on the calendar was discussed, except the change to Columbus Day. It was never mentioned. Tonight, you denied the Guilford community the opportunity to hear from residents, leaders, and experts in the Italian American community. The calendar change was never mentioned during the past 3 meetings, and free speech was suppressed tonight when you still had the ability to take action on the agenda item. The change to Columbus Day is highly offensive to the majority of Italian Americans. Yet, we were ignored. This is against the idea of inclusion. The lack of respect Italian Americans received was in stark contrast to the year-long process of receiving feedback from Native American groups, university professors, and consultants to change the Guilford Indians mascot. Why are Italians treated differently? To change an Italian American holiday of 130 years takes away from the Italian immigration experience, based on lies that have been told over and over again. Sadly, many public educators today believe these lies, and as a result, children are learning a radical and far left viewpoint, all of which are false. Most people who hate Columbus know nothing about him. A few of them are even Italian, but no one person speaks for an entire group. As president of the Italian American Defense League, our mission is to promote education, portray Italians positively, and preserve traditions. We share ideals with the Italian American One Voice Coalition, UNICO, the Italian American Alliance National, Order Sons and Daughters of Italy and America, American Italian Women of Greater New Haven, Italian American Alliance Connecticut, and Philly Italia International, and even the Native American Guardians Association. These groups have members in Guilford and tens of thousands in Connecticut and throughout the United States. Yet, our voice continues to be silenced, and we have to go from board to board and council to council to fight to preserve our own history, heritage, and culture. The board's decision artificially pits Italians and Native Americans against each other and fails to give both groups the recognition they deserve. On behalf of the IADL and supporters, I ask that Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day are recognized on 2 separate calendar dates. And here's a solution. You can include August 9th, which is designated by the United Nations as World Indigenous Peoples Day, celebrating over 400 million Indigenous peoples across the global community. September 23rd is Native American Day in California. Or it could be the Friday after Thanksgiving, which could be the most appropriate date based on New England history, and it would have no additional cost to the district. Italian Americans and Native Americans naturally support one another, and the most equitable and inclusive decision would to have 2 separate holidays for Native Americans and for Italian Americans. And I hope you consider this decision, and I would be happy to provide any other information and contacts that you would need to have a deeper dialogue on the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see Bill Maizano waiting to comment next.
Hey, Katie, I have Bill Maizano coming in.
I'm not sure what's happening.
Kevin, can you get Bill Maizano in?
Sorry, that's my cell phone. I got Bill coming in. Paul was having trouble with his computer.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think we've had a couple of members drop off because I'm getting texts that people are having internet issues. So
Yeah, I lost my signal and got back in, but I lost my Q&A list. So I know that we have Bill Mazzano next, and John Trotta will follow him.
okay.
I'm having trouble getting Bill in.
He may have dropped off as well. Can you try to bring John Trotta in, and we will come back to Bill?
I'm gonna, I can try to move on to Jonathan Trotta.
Okay. Yes, please.
I'm getting reports that something's frozen up somewhere else too.
There was something that went down with the whole Zoom call. It wasn't an internet related outage. It was related to the actual Zoom call
No,
because
that's right.
I lost it as well.
We lost a whole number of members, some of whom were able to get back on, some not.
Yeah, Dick Hirsch is saying he's having trouble too.
Yeah, I think we.
Is there something in town there maybe that went out?
No, it wasn't. It was not internet related. My internet connection was never lost. It was the actual Zoom call was almost corrupted.
So Dr. Balistraci,
I guess, I mean, if the board, how many Board of Ed members do we still have online with us?
We have a
1, 2, 3,
quorum.
4, 5, 6, 7.
Dr. Balistraci, I saw that
Yes.
there were 3 people who were waiting to comment. There was Bill Mazzano, John Trotta, and Clarice Yasuhara.
Okay.
I don't know if we will have the ability to bring any of them in, but I will reach out to each of them individually tomorrow and make our apologies. You do have a quorum. That's enough to act on any motion, including a motion to adjourn.
Right.
And I will reach out to those 3 community members with our apologies tomorrow. If you guys choose to do that. It is 11 o'clock.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And encourage them to reach out to us by email. Our apologies. This was certainly not our intention to cut this public comment short. But again, we are clearly having Zoom issues, and we cannot seem to reach or bring in the people who remain or who noted that they might want to speak. So again, it sounds like Dr. Freeman will reach out to them. And we will try to hear from each one in another way. I want to thank my colleagues. This has been a late evening. It is 11:01, particularly with an operation committee meeting starting at 6. Many of you have been in this now for 5 hours, so great appreciation for the work you've done here tonight and do regularly. I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Kristen, thank you. Second, Arnold, all in favor? Aye. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Linda, can I ask you to please take down, we have a motion to adjourn